Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. After 3 years in a coma, a young man discovered that the Dead Summoner battle game he had almost completed had become reality. Now millions of people desperately search for the legendary god who holds the key to conquering the tower. The problem is, Jinwoo was that god. He was gaining power and trying to provide his family with a better life. In reality, the protagonist was a loser. He wasted 10 years of his life playing games, and his parents were heartbroken. Jinwoo must adapt to this new reality in order to turn the world upside down. After leaving the hospital, he returns home to a life transformed by the new order and begins studying the changed world in earnest. He immerses himself in information about how the game's systems, factions, and famous figures have carried over into reality. He confirms that raids, duels, dungeons, summons, and the Tower of Trials now exist as physical phenomena rather than digital mechanics. 3 years pass, and during that time he quietly builds himself up while others struggle to control their summoned entities. By then, Jinwoo is confident that none of them can match his understanding of the system. When the system asks whether he wants to access the cube inventory, he decides it is finally time to begin in earnest, and the tutorial starts. He heads to a deserted outdoor area exactly as planned, wanting privacy before taking any risks. Satisfied that no one is around, he prepares to summon where a mishap will not endanger the public. The tutorial rewards him with 2 low-grade summoning scrolls and warns that activating them outdoors is strongly advised, making the whole situation feel undeniably real. Holding the cheap red scrolls, Jinwoo prays for even a half-decent result. He knows that for someone once called the One Heaven, starting over with worthless summons could be fatal. The odds confirm his fear. Low-grade scrolls almost always produce F-rank trash, with even an E-rank result being only a tiny possibility. Even so, Jinwoo begs the scroll for anything remotely usable before opening it. Jinwoo lowers his expectations and hopes a low-grade summoning scroll will at least give him a usable E-rank summon. He tears open the scroll and triggers the summoning despite his uncertainty. When the system activates, he freezes, realizing something is actually happening. The scroll splits open into a strange void, and he is startled that the manifestation is taking visible form in front of him. A violent burst of energy erupts from the torn scroll, far more dramatic than he expected. Jinwoo recoils in alarm as the summoning process spirals out of control. The system identifies him and completes the summon. Instead of a weak creature, an EX rank wind fairy appears and casually wakes as if this outcome were ordinary. Jinwoo is stunned that a supposedly low-grade summon produced an EX rank result. The fairy gathers herself and studies him with sleepy curiosity. As she fully awakens, she becomes confused by the situation around her. Jinwoo is overwhelmed by how unreal this is, while the fairy immediately senses something familiar about him. He pauses, trying to place why her presence feels known to him too. Jinwoo tests a memory by calling her Ramba, and the fairy denies the name while clearly reacting to it. The name shakes her, making her suspect he may be someone from her past. Her doubt breaks into excitement as she wonders if he is truly the genie god she remembers. She throws herself at him in tearful relief, making it clear she has been waiting a long time for this reunion. Jinwoo finally remembers that this fairy matches an old E-rank summon he once used extensively. He recalls that she had been a hidden overpowered unit whose attack speed scaled absurdly with repeated use. That memory confirms she was one of the bugged summons from his rookie days, the one he nicknamed Ramba after relying on her constantly. The realization clashes with what he remembers of the game's later bug fixes and deletions. He recalls the official cleanup that supposedly erased these broken summons, so her existence now makes no sense. The system reveals the answer. She is an EX rank wind fairy placed under quarantine because her traits could shatter balance under specific conditions. Jinwoo focuses on the key word and realizes this is not a normal rank but a sealed status. The fairy tearfully explains that she and the others were suddenly dragged away and imprisoned without understanding why. Jinwoo stops her emotional outburst and presses for concrete information. He asks who quarantined her, but the question seems to hit a blocked part of her memory. She tries to answer, then falters as if something is preventing the thought from surfacing. The attempt causes her visible pain, confirming that her memories have been tampered with. She concludes that some kind of cognitive seal was placed on her, leaving only fragments behind. Jinwoo shifts from reunion to investigation and asks her to report whatever she can still remember. She explains that all quarantine summons were isolated together, and under normal game rules they should have disappeared once players stopped using them. Her use of makes Jinwoo realize there may be many more sealed summons besides her. He starts calculating the implications, wondering whether every deleted bug summon might still exist somewhere. The possibility shocks him because it means the old deletions may never have been true erasure at all. He connects the dots to the 10 notorious summons flagged as bugs and removed while players were still using them. If all of those units were merely reclassified as EX rank and quarantined, then his old low-grade scrolls may be able to call them back. Looking at the torn scroll, he realizes the summons are responding specifically to his scrolls rather than appearing at random. That leads him to a bolder conclusion. He may be the only person capable of pulling these EX rank units out. To test the theory, he activates another low-grade summoning scroll immediately. The second summon succeeds, but this time it produces a gorilla instead of another EX rank anomaly. Jinwoo accepts that EX rank retrieval is not guaranteed and that ordinary low rank summons can still appear. Even so, he decides the method is sound and that he should burn through as many scrolls as possible to recover more sealed units. He sees the larger opportunity clearly. If he can reclaim every EX rank summon, he can surpass even the strength he once had at his peak. The fairy happily reaffirms her bond with him, still calling him Genie God. Jinwoo immediately orders her to stop using that name and call him Jinwoo instead. He understands that the title Genie God is already famous among the world's strongest players and would draw dangerous attention. He reminds himself that despite his knowledge, he is still weakened by the 3-year gap and cannot afford to expose a new vulnerability. So he resolves to keep his control over EX rank summons secret rather than become a target for enemies and opportunists. With that decision made, the scene settles into a tense quiet as he prepares for what this discovery will lead to next. Baek Jinwoo is suddenly confronted in the forest by a blue-furred gorilla-like summon, while a tiny wind fairy hovers nearby, and the abrupt start leaves him rattled. The gorilla panics just as much as he does, shouting in confusion, while the fairy flutters behind it, making clear that none of them expected this transition. A system message announces that the process is moving to the next phase, forcing Jinwoo to realize this is no longer preparation. A glowing portal forms as the system declares a basic tutorial dungeon has been generated, and Jinwoo is told the trial is beginning immediately. He braces himself, thinking that although he has cleared countless dungeons in the game, stepping into one for real is a completely different challenge. Staring into the portal, he admits to himself that this is no longer a familiar simulation but a dangerous reality. Fear starts to overwhelm him, but he forces himself to stay focused because panic will only get him killed. He reminds himself that he is now player Baek Jinwoo and that this tutorial is the first test he has to survive. When the system orders him to enter, he moves toward the portal with his 2 summons, deciding he will have to adapt to this twisted world as he goes. After crossing over, he pauses in uneasy silence, taking in the fact that he has truly been transported. He finds himself inside a dim cave and confirms that he is now in the dungeon proper, where the atmosphere immediately feels hostile. The system formally identifies the area as the beginner dungeon, turning his vague fear into a concrete mission. Jinwoo realizes the tutorial sequence is starting in earnest and prepares for the rules he remembers from the game. The system explains that dungeon combat requires building a team from summons, presenting the kinds of monsters that can be fielded against each other. It further clarifies that a team can contain up to 5 summons, framing this as a tactical battle rather than a simple brawl. Jinwoo is offered a starting lineup and is asked whether he wants to assign the Wind Fairy and Hairy Gorilla to his team. He notes that a normal party would have 5 members, but he also knows from experience that numbers alone do not decide a clear. Remembering all the hours he spent studying and practicing strategies alone, he judges that entering with only 2 summons is risky but still manageable. He trusts that he has already repeated this scenario enough times in the game to know its patterns by heart. Relying on that confidence, he accepts the assignment and commits to the route he has already mapped out in his mind. The system automatically summons the Wind Fairy and Hairy Gorilla into active combat roles, and both appear energized for battle. Jinwoo starts recalling the tutorial enemy he expects to face, trying to stay one step ahead. A low growl interrupts his thoughts, warning him that the first encounter has already begun. The system reveals the target as a hungry gray wolf and sets the objective plainly: defeat it and escape the cave. Jinwoo immediately identifies the wolf as an F-class monster, confirming that this should be a basic opening fight. Before the clash begins, a protective mechanism activates around him, signaling that the tutorial still has safeguards in place. A shield forms around Jinwoo, and he recognizes the same player protection system he knew from the game. That familiar shield reassures him that at least some of the game's rules still apply in this world. But the system warns that if his shield ever drops and a summon attacks him, he will truly die, making him realize failure here means actual death, not a reset. The Grey Wolf charges him with killing intent, its hostility far more terrifying in person than in any game encounter. Jinwoo orders the gorilla, Tiogo, to intercept, sending his frontline summon to meet the attack head-on. The first exchange turns chaotic and clumsy, with Tiogo roaring back at the wolf but failing to seize control of the fight. Jinwoo quickly sees the problem. The gorilla is too slow to handle the wolf cleanly. Expecting that weakness, he immediately calls on the Wind Fairy, Lamba, to support Tiogo instead of relying on brute force alone. Lamba unleashes wind pressure, a buff that sharply increases an ally's attack speed and is meant to compensate for Tiogo's sluggishness. The green wind wraps around the gorilla, and Tiogo feels the enhancement take hold. Empowered by the spell, the gorilla's confidence surges as his body responds to the speed boost. Tiogo lunges forward with renewed force, finally able to pressure the wolf instead of merely reacting to it. Seeing the buff work exactly as planned, Jinwoo regains some confidence in his command of the battle. The wolf refuses to be overwhelmed and counters with a vicious rush of its own, showing it is still dangerous despite the advantage shift. Watching the beast close in, Jinwoo is struck by how much larger and more threatening it feels in reality than it ever did in the game. Even so, he tells himself Tiogo should not lose if the game data still holds true. As the wolf and gorilla race toward each other, he clings to his knowledge and insists the matchup should still favor his summon. Yet he also realizes that if the real world diverges from the game's balance, his assumptions could collapse at any moment. That fear proves justified when the wolf slips through the exchange and lands a brutal bite instead of being stopped. The wolf drives Teal'c to the ground and mauls him, instantly turning Jinwoo's expected advantage into a crisis. Jiwoo urgently calls for Lamba, needing her to save the fight before Teal'c is finished. Lamba strains to swing her staff harder, pushing her support magic to its limit in response to his command. The intensified wind gathers around Teal'c's arm, giving him just enough speed and force to strike back from underneath the wolf. With that boosted counterattack, Teal'c smashes the wolf away and finally wounds it, halting the mauling and keeping the battle alive. The fight reaches a critical moment, as one of the wolf monsters is slammed down hard enough to shake the ground. The tiny fairy commits to a finishing strike, declaring that this battle is over. She unleashes a stronger burst of magic, shifting from panic to full control as she drives the attack forward. The Beastman ally is caught up in that power and hurled through the air with a roar. He crashes directly into the remaining wolves, turning the fairy's spell into a decisive counterattack. The impact chains through the pack, and the monsters are cut down in rapid succession. A cloud of dust and debris swallows the battlefield as the last resistance collapses. When it clears, both survivors freeze for a beat, stunned that they actually pulled through. Only one battered wolf remains upright, facing the Beastman in a final standoff. The Beastman answers with a triumphant roar, making it clear the outcome is no longer in doubt. The fairy bursts into celebration over their victory, while the exhausted man can barely process that he is still alive. A system message confirms the dungeon is cleared and awards 2 low-grade strength runes, and he realizes he has survived. Back in the city afterward, life resumes under the looming towers that now define the world. Someone happily counts a stack of cash, savoring the payoff from the day's work. Baek-ah-jin reveals she made 200,000 won in a single day and treats it as a small jackpot. The narration explains that after the world changed 3 years earlier, she found a new profession as a rune farming player. She makes her living by repeatedly clearing low-level dungeons and selling the runes she gathers to more ambitious players. She took that path because her family fell into debt after her brother's accident, and a rare C-class shadow elf summon dropping from a low-grade book gave her the chance to do it. Remembering that lucky break, she reflects that rune farming has at least provided steady income. Her thoughts are interrupted when her older brother Jinwoo calls. She answers at once and checks whether he has finally been discharged from the hospital. He confirms it, then immediately needles her, overhearing that she has become a rune peddler. She snaps back that he should call it rune farming, not by a name that makes her sound cheap. Letting her win the wording, he asks where the synthesis center is, leaving her surprised that he wants one so soon. She tells him it is in the player zone, the district built around the towers for summon-related business. As towers appeared worldwide, people needed centralized places to manage everything connected to summons and dungeon activity. Those areas grew into player zones, where dungeons, synthesis centers, enhancement facilities, and other services were gathered near the towers. They meet later in a cafe to talk in person. Ah-jin reminds him that the original towers and the towers of trials are different, setting up why location matters. She explains that in Korea only 2 towers appeared, and the player zone he needs exists only around them. Jinwoo concludes that if those facilities support tower clearing, keeping them nearby is the most efficient arrangement. She shifts the conversation to his summons and asks what ranks he got, expecting something ordinary. When he says E and F, she brightens because even an E rank has a 5% drop rate and sounds decent to her. He plays along for a moment, though he knows that answer is not the real story. He then admits he needs her help because he wants to understand this system as quickly as possible. He offers her pocket money for guiding him, and she mocks him for acting generous when she currently earns more than he does. She boasts that life can turn unexpectedly and jokes that she might become the world's greatest player. Jinwoo counters by pointing to legendary figures like Rachel and Genos, the kind of chosen talents everyone compares themselves to. He argues that those people are geniuses beyond ordinary reach, but his expression suggests he does not fully accept that limit. Ah-jin cuts the debate short and agrees to take him there if he wants to see it so badly. Jinwoo decides he wants to inspect the player zone with his own eyes. That night the tower dominates the skyline as they head toward the district built around it. The closer they get, the more the tower feels like the center of the city's new order. On the way, Ah-jin asks what summon he pulled earlier, and he casually tells her it was a wind fairy. She has never heard of such a summon and immediately demands to see it. He refuses out of embarrassment, but her curiosity only sharpens when she points out there is no reason to be secretive with family. To turn the pressure back on her, he tells her to reveal her own summon first. Confidently accepting the challenge, Ah-jin calls forth her summon and prepares him for the reveal. Jinwoo watches closely, wondering what kind of summon could make her this self-assured. Her answer is a C-rank shadow elf, a rare and clearly formidable summon that explains both her pride and her success as a rune farmer. He starts to realize something is off, but his reaction is strangely muted. When his sister excitedly talks about nobles and prison-bound criminals as if they were ordinary game enemies, he finally understands that this world treats them as real beings. Seeing the captured shadow elf drives home that these dungeon creatures are not abstract monsters but living people caught in this system. Still thinking like a player, he tries greeting the elf directly, assuming summons might understand him. His sister is baffled by the attempt and reminds him that her summon was only called to protect him, not to chat. She points out the obvious rule of this world that summons do not speak, leaving him stunned. That detail hits him hard, because it contradicts everything he remembers. He recalls that Ramba, his own fairy summon, had been talking to him from the very beginning. As he checks the rule again, his sister makes it clear that talking summons simply do not exist. He briefly wonders whether all changed creatures might now speak, but immediately realizes Ramba must be a special exception. Trying to confirm things, he asks to see her summon, but she refuses for now. She insists they should avoid drawing attention and decides it is safer to keep moving while she figures out how to handle Ramba later. He gives up arguing and lets her lead, while she complains that he is acting like a scammer. As they arrive, the scale of the rebuilt city leaves him momentarily overwhelmed. He sees that the old game setting has become a crowded entertainment district where people casually mingle with monsters and dungeon-themed attractions. His sister explains that after the Tower of Trials appeared, the corporation tore down the old district and rebuilt it into this commercial zone. When he questions who would build a playground besides something so ominous, she treats the answer as obvious. For everyone else, the danger only made the place more exciting and profitable. She explains that dungeons eventually settled into Jamza World because thrill-seekers were eager to turn them into entertainment. He admits that dungeons are still frightening, but seeing game locations made real is also strangely exciting. That mix of fear and fascination pulls him deeper into the reality of this transformed world. She shows him the exchange area, where players convert summoning scrolls into runes and handle other dungeon-related business. The place stirs old memories for him, but she keeps the tour practical and points him toward the information desk beginners use. She bluntly reminds him that he is still a novice and needs proper guidance. His pride flares up, and he refuses her help, insisting he has nothing to learn or ask. She hesitates, worried by how stubborn and distant he has become. He thanks her for the tour and tells her to go on ahead without him. When she questions him, he claims he just wants to look around by himself and sends her away. Left behind, she worries that something is seriously wrong with him since waking up. Even so, she decides to respect his space while staying ready to help if needed. Once she leaves, he finally has the privacy he wanted. He slips into a quieter area, making sure no one is around before acting. Then he calls for Ramba in secret. The fairy appears immediately, cheerful and loud as ever. He panics and clamps her mouth shut before she can draw attention. As she struggles in confusion, he crouches down and tries to calm the situation. He urgently explains that in this world only he can hear her voice, and that she must stay quiet. Once she understands that others cannot hear her unless she speaks inside his mind, he starts organizing his thoughts. With Ramba hidden beside him, he turns to the practical problem in front of him. He needs money before he can start clearing dungeons. Checking his account gives him a harsh answer. He has only 12,501 left. The tiny balance makes him feel like his life has hit bottom. He reflects bitterly that even after waking in another world, his entire fortune is still pathetic. Frustration boils over, but anger alone solves nothing. He rejects the idea of asking his parents for help, knowing how hard his mother already works. He remembers that his father is also laboring just to keep the family afloat. Because of that, taking money from them would feel unforgivable to him. So he decides he has to build himself up from nothing. He recalls that in the game Janugdo stood above everyone else partly because he was a non-spender who climbed without buying power. That memory hardens into resolve as he reminds himself he once grew strong without spending a single cent. He vows that reality will not stop him, and that he will rise to the top again through his own effort. Jinwoo is stunned when his phone suddenly shows that 500,000 KRW has been deposited into his account. He immediately wonders who sent it, and whether it could be some kind of new player benefit. The message reveals the money came from his mother, who heard from Ajin that he was trying to work and sent what little help she could. Realizing the sender is his mother leaves him shaken. He remembers how she cared for him through her own hardship and understands she must have struggled badly to save even this much. That memory brings back her gentle promise that she was still with him as his mother. He recalls her pleading for him to recover and wake up healthy again. Overcome, Jinwoo silently thanks her. He hardens his resolve and vows that he will succeed. More than that, he decides he will raise his whole family into a life of comfort. Looking over the shop, he realizes he has to make up for the years everyone else spent advancing. To become the best, he concludes he needs to start acting like it by gathering the materials required to challenge real dungeons. He begins by buying low-grade summoning scrolls, deciding to build a team first. One of the summons turns out to be a weak F-rank slime mass. Another is an equally weak F-rank horned butterfly. The best pull is an E-rank poison lizard, which at least gives him something usable. Seeing the lizard, Jinwoo judges himself lucky to have gotten an E-rank at all and starts calculating his odds of assembling a workable squad. He decides the poison lizard is at least efficient enough to keep. The slime, however, looks so useless that he plans to scrap it later. With Ramba, The butterfly, the lizard, and the slime together, he decides the team is barely sufficient to start. He lays out his growth plan, farm runes, gather materials, swap summons to fit each fight, and grind steadily until he can handle the system. His larger goal is to collect all the low-rank creatures needed to eventually clear the tower and reach a level where even an S-rank team could not stop him. So he commits to hunting down every remaining E-rank summon he can find. Satisfied with the plan, he tells himself that the preparation is done. Now confident, he turns to the real task ahead. The first practical step is obvious. He needs to find a dungeon. He compares it to the game he once played, where entering a dungeon was as simple as tapping a stage, and realizes reality will not be that easy. Even so, he heads out curious to see how dungeon entry works in the real world. That confidence falters the moment something unexpected catches him off guard. At the player zone, he discovers that ordinary people can enter freely, but players are treated differently. Even with summoned creatures at his side, he is confused by the restriction placed on him. He recalls the common rule that summoned creature users were never supposed to be barred from entering dungeons, which makes this even stranger. The broader situation becomes clear. Dungeon gates are now appearing randomly across the country, with their danger judged by emitted energy. Because of that crisis, the rules have changed, and even the easiest dungeon can no longer be entered casually. A new regulation now limits entry to people officially registered as players. Unable to do anything about it, Jinwoo drops onto a bench in frustration. He bitterly curses his luck for awakening only after the law changed. As he sinks into that setback, Ramba reaches out to get his attention. The little fairy tries to encourage him not to give up. Her support lifts his mood enough for him to smile again. He thanks Ramba, appreciating the comfort. Then his phone rings, interrupting the moment. The call is from his younger sister. She asks when he is coming home and says their mother wants to know what to make for dinner. Jinwoo says he will eat separately, then asks if she knows anything about the new dungeon entry rule. His sister immediately confirms that player registration is now required before entering a dungeon. Jinwoo accuses her of hiding that from him, but she insists she simply forgot to mention it. She explains the rule was introduced recently after too many people died in dungeons and the government had to intervene. She adds that the rollout has been chaotic, with notices posted directly in front of dungeon sites and entry now blocked until registration is completed. As he listens, Jinwoo realizes he may have to deal with a tedious registration process before he can begin hunting dungeons at all. The story opens by warning that once everyone becomes a player obsessed with money, society itself begins to crack. While speaking on the phone, Jinwoo is reminded that beyond domestic standings there is also a formal world ranking system. He learns the system publicly tracks the top 100 players each year, and his own country is so weak in this field that it barely even appears internationally. His caller jokes that if the legendary genie god appeared, their nation might finally rise, and Jinwoo awkwardly brushes off the praise before ending the call. Left alone, he falls silent, turning over what he has just heard. Deciding there is nothing more to do tonight, he tells himself to rest and prepare properly for what comes next. By morning, ordinary domestic life resumes with breakfast being prepared at home. His mother cooks while his father reads, grounding the scene in a rare moment of family normalcy. His father notices something unusual and looks up, sensing Jinwoo is already moving out early. Jinwoo appears dressed to leave at dawn, explaining that he has somewhere he needs to be. His mother worries he should at least eat first, but he refuses and keeps preparing to go. Even while tying his shoes, he hesitates, aware that this departure carries more weight than a normal outing. He stops long enough to directly address both of his parents. With an unexpectedly warm smile, Jinwoo apologizes for the trouble he has caused them and sincerely thanks them. He leaves before they can fully process the sudden tenderness of his farewell. After he is gone, his father tries to dismiss the moment as embarrassing, but the concern underneath is obvious. As the parents reassure themselves with government promises of safety training, the news on a phone reports yet more deaths tied to dungeon incidents. On his way out, Jinwoo watches that report and reflects that countless people have died because they chased delusions through this game-like system. Having spent years trapped in that obsession himself, he now sees it with a colder clarity, and finds it pitiful rather than inspiring. He joins a long line at a registration counter, stepping forward when his turn finally comes. Jinwoo submits an application, formally entering the process he came for. Before leaving, he asks the clerk how many applicants will actually be allowed to qualify as players. The answer is brutal. Only 50 people who pass the final test will earn the title, despite the huge crowd waiting behind him. Faced with those odds, he steadies himself instead of backing down. He decides that if he cannot clear even this first hurdle, he never deserved the grand title he once dreamed of. That thought hardens into resolve as he imagines proving himself worthy of the heights he once chased. Later, he sits in a large lounge where applicants and officials gather, waiting for the next stage. Elsewhere in the same venue, officials review candidate files while discussing how few people can be chosen from such a massive pool. Judge Park Chang-suk argues that if they truly want talent, they should be selecting more people instead of bottlenecking the process. Before that complaint can go further, the building is violently struck, blasting apart the floor and shattering the calm. Park is thrown into alarm as the room erupts into dust, screams, and confusion. A newcomer walks into the wreckage with deliberate confidence, making it clear this attack was no accident. The intruder reveals himself as a hostile summoner flanked by monsters, and he taunts Park for acting relaxed after killing his brothers. Park immediately recognizes him as the dangerous enemy he had hoped not to face again. The threat escalates at once as one of the summoned creatures smashes down with overwhelming force. Park answers by calling out his own powerful summons, turning the room into a battlefield between monster handlers. From the sidelines, terrified civilians realize both the gang and headquarters have somehow converged in the worst possible place. Jin-woo notices the disturbance, and finally turns to see what everyone is panicking about. He finds himself staring at a full standoff between Park, the invading summoner, and multiple monsters inside the hall. Rather than panic, Ji-woo treats the chaos with baffled calm, as if he has stumbled into something absurd more than terrifying. Around him, everyone else struggles to understand how the situation spiraled into open combat so suddenly. The bystanders fear they are about to die, while whispers identify Park Chan-suk as a man known for crushing demon-affiliated gangs. Ji-woo, however, gets hung up on one detail and reacts with confusion instead of fear. What catches his attention is the idea that these attackers are being called a gang. The enemy leader stands smugly among his summons, clearly confident that brute force and intimidation will settle this. Park condemns them for using summons like common thugs and declares that the attack has become an emergency. He orders everyone present to summon their creatures and raise defensive shields, shifting the civilians from helplessness to organized survival. Ji-woo follows the order and calls out Ramba, bringing forth his tiny fairy companion inside the protective barrier. Ramba appears, quietly studies the battlefield, and seems to assess the situation with detached seriousness. Then, instead of making a grand entrance, the little fairy simply recognizes Jin-woo and hushes him, as if she already knows more than he does. The fairy stops the protagonist from exposing what he knows, reminding him they made a promise to keep silent. Nearby, a scarred man greets the arrival of an apostle of justice with mocking confidence. A blood orc charges into battle, eager to test how long this supposed champion can last. The protagonist initially decides that stepping in would only create trouble for him. Still, he chooses to watch a little longer so he can understand how these people fight. The clash immediately escalates as the room is rocked by violent destruction. A flaming bird-like summon unleashes a barrage of fire toward the enemy. The attack detonates across the battlefield in a massive explosion, but the blood orc emerges from the flames still standing, its body seemingly unharmed. The scarred gangster laughs off the failed attack and taunts his opponents for being too weak. The bearded fighter realizes something is wrong with the situation. As tension rises, he begins to grasp that the enemy's resilience has a hidden cause. The fairy bluntly judges the protagonist for staying passive and useless. She also criticizes his complete lack of fighting spirit, making it clear she expects more from him. From the sidelines, others assume Park Chan-suk is being overwhelmed and fear innocent civilians will be slaughtered if he loses. The protagonist hesitates, unsure whether he should involve himself at all. While he weighs the risk of being dragged into the conflict, the orc's axe comes down again. The blood orc presses the attack with brutal force, driving the defenders back. Seeing the likely outcome, the protagonist realizes he cannot keep living quietly if he lets this end in death. He finally steps forward, but the bearded man instinctively tries to protect him and orders him to stay back. The protagonist cuts in with an observation. The timing of the flame turtle's skill is off. He directs the fighter's attention to the support monster's position behind the blood orc. He identifies one of them as the source of a fire resistance buff. Another support creature confirms the pattern, proving the orc's defense is being reinforced from the rear rather than by its own strength. The bearded man quickly connects the clues and realizes the orc only endured the flames because the buffers activated at the right moments. With the trick exposed, he immediately shifts his focus from the orc to the support line behind it. The blood orc senses the danger too late and realizes the target has changed. Park Chan-suk commands the flame turtle to strike the support monsters instead. A stream of fire tears across the battlefield toward the rear line. When the attack lands exactly as intended, Park is stunned that the outsider's advice actually worked. The scarred gangster panics as the battle suddenly turns against him, and wonders how his setup was read so easily. Before he can recover, thick roots burst through the floor and walls. The roots lash out and begin crushing the remaining support creatures, leaving the gangster horrified by how completely his formation is collapsing. The fire summon follows up with another concentrated barrage. The combined assault erupts into a devastating blast that wipes out the enemy's remaining advantage. As the battlefield settles, the gangster can only stare in disbelief at how decisively everything has fallen apart. He hurriedly throws up a defensive barrier and begs for a pause. Abandoning all bravado, he surrenders and offers to turn himself in, admitting he was wrong. His plea is cut short when he notices the roots closing in around him. Bound tightly, he desperately promises to quit gang activity if they spare him. Park rejects the plea outright and reminds him that gang members are executed on the spot. The gangster finally understands he is truly about to die. Park coldly forces him to acknowledge that this is the rule he lived by. The roots execute him immediately, ending the fight in a spray of blood. The surviving onlookers are left stunned, barely able to ask whether it is really over. Relief breaks through as they realize Park Chang-suk has won. The crowd erupts in praise for Park, celebrating the death of the gang leader as a righteous victory. Watching them cheer over a killing, the protagonist is disturbed by how casually this world treats execution. He accepts that this is no longer the world he knew and that surviving here will require far stronger resolve. As he steels himself, someone approaches him respectfully and asks for his attention. The official thanks Jinwoo for helping earlier and introduces himself as Park Chang-suk, a council member from player headquarters. Park credits Jinwoo's information with helping capture the terrorist, and Jinwoo downplays his role as they shake hands. As Park moves to reward him, he asks which guild Jinwoo belongs to, only to learn Jinwoo is not even registered with headquarters yet. That answer catches Park off guard, because Jinwoo had identified a summoner's buff instantly despite being an unregistered player. Park quickly decides an ID card will be enough to verify him for now, and Jinwoo agrees without issue. Jinwoo hands over his identification, allowing the process to continue. Park explains that after a background check, Jinwoo will receive a proper reward under the rules, and Jinwoo accepts that. Jinwoo leaves the matter in Park's hands and heads out, still relaxed. Left behind, Park keeps thinking about how unusual Jinwoo is. His suspicion turns into action as he immediately makes a call. Park contacts someone and says he has just sent over data for review. He specifically orders an investigation into Baek Jinwoo. Meanwhile, Jinwoo walks through the city with his fairy companion perched on his head. The scene shifts into a calmer moment under the bright daytime sky. Jinwoo offers the fairy a piece of cream bread. Delighted, she finally gets to speak again and gushes over how frustrating it had been to stay silent. Jinwoo finds her easy to please as she happily accepts such a simple treat. She clings to the bread and notes that, unlike the players who quarrel with their summons, she is content with something this small. Her innocent trust makes Jinwoo uneasy, because he cannot honestly promise that nothing bad will happen. He remembers the red-skinned warrior who intervened during the crisis. That summoned fighter had made it clear Jinwoo might have died without his help, forcing Jinwoo to admit how much the world has changed beyond what he expected. Sitting in the park, Jinwoo exhales and accepts that he can no longer delay getting involved. He decides he has to start hunting in earnest. His immediate goal becomes gathering summoning scrolls and calling his next beast as quickly as possible. He narrows his priorities to the Bell Instructor and the Explosion Dragon, believing their rank and rarity make them obtainable only through grade summoning scrolls. Beside him, the fairy promptly falls asleep after her snack, leaving him to think alone. Jinwoo rises, ready to move on. He casually suggests they get going, treating the decision as settled. At the same time, Park receives shocking news over the phone. He learns that Baek Jinwoo had spent 3 years hospitalized after a traffic accident. Park realizes that explains why Jinwoo had remained unregistered all this time. The report adds that the accident happened 3 years ago, during a period when the world was already being overturned and chaos was common. What truly stuns Park is hearing that Jinwoo applied for player registration immediately after being discharged. He urgently checks the registration documents to confirm the claim. Seeing the paperwork is genuine, Park is left reeling. When someone asks if anything is wrong, he hides his reaction and brushes it off. He resumes the call and takes charge of this month's assigned examiner duty himself, refusing to explain further. After ending the call, he keeps turning over the implications in his mind. To Park, registering as a player right after waking from a long hospitalization suggests extraordinary adaptability. He becomes convinced that Baek Jinwoo may be an exceptional talent worth watching closely. Later, the setting shifts to a formal venue where player evaluations are about to begin. Jinwoo arrives and is immediately struck by the scale of the event. He had expected a crowd, but not one this overwhelming. Seeing the packed hall, he realizes all of them are here to train and compete for the same goal. He understands that surviving this field of competitors is what it takes to become a player. Even so, he stays confident, convinced that no one here knows games better than he does. As he settles in, someone important steps forward to begin the proceedings. When the examiner asks whether everyone has gathered, Jinwoo recognizes that the real test is starting. Then he looks up in surprise at the voice. The examiner introduces himself as Park Chan-suk, revealing that the same man from earlier will oversee the pre-written test. In a quiet meeting room, the examiner opens by acknowledging that Jinwoo was caught off guard by who he turned out to be. Jinwoo admits he never expected the man interviewing him to be an examiner, setting an unexpectedly informal tone between them. When the examiner asks about training, Jinwoo hesitates, and the question leads into what that training actually involved. The examiner recalls how Jinwoo was taught advanced summon combinations that commonly appear on written tests. As that lesson is brought up, Jinwoo remembers being drilled on summon synergy while his tiny fairy companion had dozed off on him. The fairy wakes in confusion, reinforcing how long and tedious that training session had been. Jinwoo also remembers realizing the examiner had used an old combination without permission, which had annoyed him even during the lecture. Back in the present, Jinwoo downplays the whole experience as manageable, though he privately found it irritating. The examiner reveals he called Jinwoo in alone because of the reward application Jinwoo submitted after the test. Before discussing that application, the examiner says there is something else he wants to confirm first. He abruptly asks whether Jinwoo used to be a gamer, making it clear he suspects a connection between Jinwoo's skills and gaming experience. Jinwoo is thrown by the question and asks what exactly the examiner means. The examiner explains that anyone who played Battle of Summoners is considered a gamer, and that many top Korean rankers came from that background. Jinwoo quickly understands where this is going and realizes his unusual game knowledge may have exposed him. He admits he did play the game, and the examiner immediately presses for how long. Knowing the game was obscure and nearly dead, Jinwoo realizes that giving his real playtime would make him too easy to identify. So he lies and claims he only played for about a year. The examiner reacts with shock, because even that shortened answer is far more impressive than he expected. Jinwoo nervously checks whether he said something wrong, wondering if even his fake answer was too revealing. The examiner is amazed that Jinwoo stayed with such an unpopular game for a full year, treating that alone as proof of unusual dedication. He explains that most Korean rankers never even played that long, which makes Jinwoo seem even more exceptional. Recovering himself, the examiner moves on and says he has prepared 2 possible rewards for Jinwoo to choose from. The first option is immediate official player registration through the examiner's authority. It also includes a direct job offer at headquarters, effectively fast-tracking Jinwoo into the system. Jinwoo listens without much excitement and asks for the second option instead. The second reward is simply 5 million won, which the examiner presents as the obvious lesser choice. Expecting Jinwoo to value status and opportunity, the examiner all but assumes he will choose registration and employment. Instead, Jinwoo bluntly chooses the money, leaving the examiner stunned. When the examiner protests that player registration usually takes a long time, Jinwoo calmly dismisses the concern. He states that he can handle registration himself, making it clear he does not need the examiner's help. Jinwoo adds that he has no intention of joining headquarters because he is already busy finding summons and cannot afford distractions. Soon after, he arrives at the public test site called Playzone, where a portal has been prepared for applicants. When called by name, Jinwoo confirms his identity and steps forward with quiet confidence. A staff member explains that this practical exam is the weekly dungeon clearing test, and that Jinwoo will be entering the Tuesday dungeon under a time attack format. From a distance, the examiner watches Jinwoo approach the portal, still processing the fact that his offer was rejected. He admits to himself that he never expected Jinwoo to refuse such favorable terms. The more he thinks about it, the more convinced he becomes that Jinwoo's value is far beyond what he first assumed. That realization drives him to urgently review the paperwork again, now seeing Jinwoo's abilities in a completely different light. A professor examining the case becomes excited, concluding that this applicant's unusual summon control could reshape how they evaluate talent in Korea. Even the examiner is told that, if things go well, Jinwoo might eventually rise into the rankings. Left unsettled, he wonders whether he should have offered Jinwoo even better conditions before letting him walk away. At the test site, the explanation ends and the staff member gives Jinwoo permission to enter the dungeon. Jinwoo steps forward without hesitation, committing himself to the trial. Facing the portal, he decides to test himself and enters with his companions. Inside, Jinwoo arrives in a dungeon alongside his fairy and ape-like summon, immediately readying for combat. A system message reveals the challenge. The room is packed with highly toxic slimes, and he must defeat them and escape quickly. The fairy reacts with alarm, but Jinwoo stays composed and prepares to handle the situation head-on. His ape-like summon powers itself up enthusiastically, showing it is eager and battle-ready. The dungeon's true nature is then revealed. The Tuesday dungeon is a maze where defeating slimes and searching for the route eventually leads to a boss. It is also notorious for wasting beginners' time by getting them hopelessly lost until they run out of time. Jinwoo pushes forward with quiet confidence, convinced the run will amount to nothing special. As his summons charge ahead, he urges them to ignore lesser slimes and keep moving straight for the goal. He spots a side passage and immediately identifies it as the route that matters. Trusting his judgment, the group cuts through the shortcut to reach the end faster. That decision triggers the final encounter, and the dungeon announces the appearance of the boss monster. Rather than panic, Jinwoo treats it like a first meeting with something he already understands. The enemy reveals itself as a giant slime, exactly the kind of target he expected. Jinwoo orders his summons to attack with everything they have, turning the fight into a speed test. His beast summon launches itself at the crowned slime without hesitation. The impact tears through the boss in a single overwhelming strike. Jinwoo calmly notes that the result was predictable because the slime-type boss is inherently fragile. He reflects that even an E-class summon can become deadly when its attack speed is this high. Imagining how much stronger other summons could be with the same advantage, he lets his team finish the job. Before he can even process it, the system declares the boss defeated. The dungeon then announces a clear time of 5 minutes 32 seconds, and Jinwoo only thinks it is slower than his old standards. His indifference vanishes when more notifications appear, including a special achievement. As extra rewards are added, he realizes something far more significant than loot is happening. The implication hits him at once. He may have just set the best record in South Korea. Elsewhere, officials monitoring dungeon records are jolted when the system updates in real time. They confirm that Tuesday dungeon, low grade, has been cleared in 5 minutes 32 seconds. The staff are stunned by how drastic the improvement is and wonder whether a top-ranked player found some new method. The updated profile identifies the record holder as Baek Jinwoo, a name none of them recognize. That only deepens the mystery, because he does not appear to be any known ranker. The shock grows when they realize an unranked nobody has broken a record previously held by the nation's #1 player. The news is escalated to a higher-level meeting, where Jinwoo's profile is displayed before senior officials. Even the investigators can barely process how extraordinary Jinwoo's result is. One veteran official reacts with delighted certainty instead of doubt. He declares that Baek Jinwoo is the real thing and a national-level asset. He insists they must secure Jinwoo immediately before any rival organization or country reaches him first. When others question skipping procedure, he orders them to register Jinwoo as a player at once, without even waiting for a formal player match. He points out that while elite rankers have dominated previous records, none of them ever approached a time this extreme. Compared with the existing top performances, Jinwoo's clear time stands out as a complete disruption of the established order. The scale of the upset feels almost unreal, as if time itself has been forced out of alignment. The officials conclude that Jinwoo has surpassed the Korean record so decisively that ordinary evaluation methods may no longer apply. The senior official argues that talent of this level deserves exceptional treatment. Soon after, outside the association building, Jinwoo leaves still thinking the whole matter is being exaggerated. He honestly cannot believe that a 5-minute run would count as a national record. His thoughts are interrupted when someone calls out to him by name. The bearded official rushes over with open excitement, eager to meet the man behind the record. Jinwoo is left awkward and wary as the older man barrels toward him with overwhelming enthusiasm. The official praises the record as unbelievable and presses Jinwoo for the secret behind clearing the dungeon so quickly. Jinwoo brushes it off modestly, explaining that the Tuesday Dungeon's labyrinth is so complex that once you understand it, moving through it feels natural. Before pushing further, the official hands him something first. Jinwoo realizes it is a player license, meaning the association has already decided to register him immediately. The official frames it as recognition that Jinwoo has already proven enough and no longer needs to justify himself. Even while accepting that, Jinwoo is asked once more how he actually broke the record. He hesitates, knowing the answer is not something he can casually reveal. As he looks down at the license in his hand, he weighs what this new status will change. He realizes that if he shares what he knows now, South Korea's overall power could rise dramatically overnight. But his thoughts immediately turn to the consequences afterward, including the possibility of wealth, influence, and a future where everything around him changes. While weighing the risks of his situation, Jinwoo considers that cooperating with the authorities could at least bring money and official backing, even if it also means being used. He opens the conversation by pointing out that the other side has already crossed the line. The bearded official realizes Jinwoo is calling out his intrusive approach and is briefly taken aback. He immediately apologizes, recognizing that he pushed too far. Still, he frames his caution as the kind of guarded move one strategist makes when dealing with another valuable player. He bluntly admits that South Korea is desperate to secure talent like Jinwoo. Jinwoo senses no obvious malice in him and starts reassessing the man. The official's prompt payment, decent manner, and quick understanding make Jinwoo think this alliance might be useful. Jinwoo decides he may be able to use the country's need for him to grow faster than he could alone. He acknowledges the man's political status and agrees to continue the discussion somewhere private. The 10th Street encounter gives way to a formal meeting indoors. Once seated, the official drops the pretense and directly asks for Jinwoo's help. He explains that headquarters wants Jinwoo's knowledge specifically. When the official reveals he investigated Jinwoo's 3 years in a hospital bed, Jinwoo realizes he has already been thoroughly profiled. The official apologizes again, but justifies it by saying an unregistered talent had to be checked for possible criminal ties. Jinwoo firmly shuts that down and makes clear he will not tolerate another background probe. The official notes that most people become compliant when national interests are invoked, but Jinwoo clearly does not. As Jinwoo calmly drinks his tea, the official recognizes that he knows his own value too well to be pressured cheaply. Jinwoo finally states the real issue. If the country wants his help, he wants to know what he personally gains. He reduces the negotiation to a simple demand for meaningful cooperation in return. The official admits his motives are not purely patriotic either, since helping Jinwoo would also strengthen his own standing within headquarters and in politics. He openly imagines that successful results could raise his influence even higher. Jinwoo immediately understands he is dealing with a politician who expects mutual benefit. The official steels himself and moves to make a concrete offer. He promises to support Jinwoo as much as his authority allows. Jinwoo finds the offer too vague and realizes a civil servant cannot freely direct resources however he wants. So he decides to set the terms himself and agrees only on a limited basis. He offers a trial arrangement lasting just 1 month, catching the official off guard. Jinwoo explains that since he has only recently registered, he will spend that month growing stronger while accepting support as needed. He adds that continued cooperation depends on whether he is satisfied, and if not, he will repay what he received with equivalent information. The official realizes Jinwoo intends to use him as a temporary administrative backer rather than submit himself fully. Even so, he accepts the audacious condition because staying close to Jinwoo is still worth it. The two seal the 1-month deal with a handshake, each believing the arrangement will benefit him. Before ending the meeting, Jinwoo says there is one more condition. He demands that the fact he broke the record this time be kept from spreading. When asked why, Jinwoo answers plainly that it is for his own safety. The official starts to argue that headquarters could protect him, but Jinwoo cuts that idea off immediately. Jinwoo makes it clear he does not trust headquarters to truly shield a gifted individual from the consequences of that fame. Understanding the warning, the official agrees to suppress the information as much as possible. He cautions, however, that some leakage may still happen over time, and Jinwoo accepts that limit. With the terms settled, the official takes his leave and arranges to meet again later. Left alone, Jinwoo confirms to himself that at least the man should keep quiet, which is enough for now. He turns his attention to the rewards he received earlier and decides to inspect them. Using his interface, he opens the reward list with growing interest. He is stunned to find high-grade summoning scrolls and abrasive items among the prizes, far better than expected. He concludes these are first-time achievement rewards, the kind given only once per player. Although he is tempted to use the scrolls immediately, he hesitates because gambling such rare items with only a few attempts feels wasteful. Then he remembers another system tied to headquarters that might solve the problem. He recalls the player web app, which the assemblyman had installed and which handles most transactions with headquarters. Remembering the official's enthusiastic recommendation, Jinwoo prepares to use that channel to turn the new arrangement to his advantage. Jinwoo checks the market prices, expecting to compare item values. Something on the screen immediately catches him off guard. His shock spikes as he realizes the result is far beyond anything he expected. The app shows he has earned 3 million won from a brief dungeon run, making the reward feel unreal. He is stunned that just a few minutes in a dungeon produced that much money. The sudden windfall makes him think of how much more he could gain if he keeps exploiting this advantage. For a moment, he imagines finally easing his family's financial worries. He quickly shifts from excitement to planning and decides to reinvest the money into high-grade summoning scrolls, since his current drill instructor can already handle enemies at his level. But while browsing the listings, he notices something odd about the market. Low-grade summoning scrolls are absurdly cheap and oversupplied, unlike the stronger scrolls he expected to buy. Sensing an opportunity, he decides to ask Ajin for an explanation. He calls her to find out why the prices are so distorted. Ajin answers casually, and he gets straight to the point. He explains the strange market situation to her. Ajin reveals that headquarters buys low-grade scrolls directly. Jinwoo is puzzled about why an official organization would want them. She explains that headquarters purchases them in fixed daily quantities with tax money, supposedly to support rankers, and pays a guaranteed minimum price of 5,000 won each. Jinwoo realizes that guaranteed buyers keep sellers from lowering the price. Then Ajin adds that the policy may be abolished soon, which immediately grabs his attention. She says the program is being criticized because public funds are being used to buy weak scrolls the headquarters does not even need. Once the call ends, Jinwoo concludes that low-grade scrolls are plentiful, cheap, and still useful under the right conditions. He goes to see Assemblyman Baek Ji-woo, who welcomes him warmly as if he had expected this visit. The Assemblyman notes that Jinwoo came sooner than anticipated, and Jinwoo admits circumstances forced his hand. After a brief pause, the Assemblyman invites him to state what he wants. Jinwoo asks for low-grade summoning scrolls instead of the better ones, surprising the older man. When asked how many, Jinwoo answers that he wants as many as possible. The Assemblyman immediately suspects Jinwoo has a specific plan, because supplying that many would be easy only if there is a real purpose behind it. He says he can provide them if Jinwoo intends to resell them, but Jinwoo denies that and hints he wants to use them himself. That answer convinces the Assemblyman that Jinwoo is pursuing something unusual. He realizes Jinwoo is not collecting cheap scrolls randomly, and may be preparing a special method. Even so, the Assemblyman agrees in principle and sets a condition. He asks for a piece of useful information in return, explaining that as an elected official he cannot simply hand over publicly purchased goods without justification. If he were caught giving away tax-funded scrolls, it would damage the public trust he depends on. So he proposes a trade. If Jinwoo provides valuable information, he will match it with an equivalent amount of low-grade scrolls, while also protecting himself politically. Jinwoo understands that this will be a business deal, not a favor. He accepts the arrangement, deciding it is still worth paying with information. Jinwoo begins by revealing a hidden achievement tied to clearing the Tuesday dungeon quickly. He explains that clearing the domestic first-place record in under 6 minutes and 20 seconds grants 3 high-grade summoning scrolls. He adds that the reward can be claimed again whenever another player breaks the record, allowing repeated payouts through competition. By taking turns reclaiming the record, players can keep renewing the reward and maximize the number of high-grade scrolls earned. He further points out that this process also strengthens the nation overall, since those rewards translate into more national power. The Assemblyman recognizes the value immediately and admits it aligns with methods already used in similar systems. He decides the information is practical and low risk, since many players have not yet received the reward even once. Jinwoo then offers a second secret, the actual strategy for the Tuesday dungeon. The assemblyman is thrilled, assuming this is the breakthrough he was hoping for. Ji-woo corrects him and says that was not the real point, because the method used this time was only a temporary shortcut. He clarifies that with this method anyone could clear the dungeon in around 3 minutes, which shocks the assemblyman even more. Before giving more away, Ji-woo stops the conversation to renegotiate. He raises the price, demanding not only the low-grade scrolls but also 50 high-grade summoning scrolls for the strategy. The assemblyman reels at the enormous cost, but Ji-woo coolly insists that the deal is actually cheap for what he is offering. The young man explains that dungeon rewards can be claimed only by the one who clears the dungeon, making the information he holds uniquely valuable. The injured negotiator accepts those terms, yielding to the leverage placed on him. Their superior immediately commits to paying 150 million if the information proves true. The young man calmly adds another condition. He also wants 10,000 low-grade summoning scrolls, and he assures them they will not regret it. By sunset, the councilman gathers his people for an urgent meeting. His subordinates wonder why they were summoned so suddenly. He reveals that he has called them in to test something important. One of the men guesses this must be connected to the recent disruption of the usual routine. The councilman brings up the newly broken Tuesday dungeon record, and the group realizes this meeting is tied to that event. He explains that he obtained a strategy from overseas and that when Baek Jin-woo tested it, the results were excellent. The listeners are stunned, and they begin to understand why the matter had been kept quiet. When they infer that he intends to use this method himself, the councilman confirms it without hesitation. He declares that from now on they will use this approach to crush the Tuesday dungeon record completely. The key to the strategy is a summoned beast called the Spotted Komodo. The group struggles to believe that such an ordinary-looking summon could be the answer. By reputation, the Spotted Komodo is only a grade B summon with balanced but unremarkable combat ability, nothing that should redefine records. Its official profile presents it as a versatile but mediocre summon, reinforcing the impression that it is nothing special. Because of that reputation, most people dismiss it as a disappointing choice. What they failed to realize is that the creature has a hidden specialty. Its true strength is devouring weak monsters with absurd efficiency, turning low-level dungeon runs into a feeding frenzy. The story shifts to the city where the results of that discovery begin to spread. New rankings show the Tuesday dungeon clear time being broken again and again under Park Chun-sik's name. The councilman's men confirm the strategy works exactly as promised, with the boss room reached in under a minute. The team celebrates the summon as a gold mine, thrilled that they can now profit without relying on outside agents. A few days pass as the impact of the new method grows. News outlets begin reporting on Korea's repeatedly shattered Tuesday dungeon records and speculate about who is behind it. Public attention turns toward Park Chan-suk, with articles suggesting he may have acquired valuable foreign information and could even challenge world records. Reading the coverage, the councilman concludes that this proves Baek Jin-woo is far more than a talented teenager. He makes a decision to build a team dedicated specifically to Baek Jin-woo. He begins reviewing candidate files, starting with Jin-woo himself. After considering the options, he settles on 3 people as the right core members. Their dossiers are laid out, finalizing the first shape of the team he wants to assemble. Elsewhere, Jin-woo checks his account and is shocked to see over 167 million won deposited. The sudden wealth makes him realize just how profitable his deal was, and he is overwhelmed by how easily the money came. Then he turns his attention to the other half of the payment, while carrying a bottle of water and opening his inventory. The promised 10,000 low-grade summoning scrolls are now in his possession. Satisfied that the employer kept his word, Jin-woo decides he should uphold his side as well. He prepares himself for a long session, steeling his resolve before starting. Ramba eagerly joins in, ready to help with whatever comes next. Jin-woo pours out the water as part of the setup for mass summoning. Ramba turns the moment into a desperate prayer, calling on every possible higher power for a good result. She begs for Jin-woo to finally receive a worthwhile summoned beast. Jin-woo begins, determined to push through an endless grind. He tears open the first scroll and commits to the exhausting process. Soon the area is buried under piles of worthless-looking summons while Jin-woo collapses from the sheer repetition. After opening 3,600 scrolls in a single hour without success, he starts to wonder if anything better will ever appear. Ramba snaps him out of that doubt, insisting he is being ridiculous. She reminds him that an EX-grade summon is not something that appears easily, especially when he already got one on his first try. Jin-woo argues that his first miracle was just luck and cannot be expected again. He points out that even 10,000 scrolls may not be enough to reach the kind of summons they are hoping for, leaving the outcome uncertain. A fairy companion realizes Jin-woo knows nothing about the summoning system and starts explaining the rules to him. She reveals that summoned beasts are distributed across all players, making any specific creature incredibly rare despite the huge total population. Before he can dwell on the odds, she points out that one detail matters more than the rest. Because the world is under quarantine with only one player present, every summonable creature is effectively assigned to Jin-woo alone. Jin-woo is stunned by the implication, while the fairy admits she does not know why the system works that way. She clarifies that this makes him the only person who can draw summon-only EX-grade creatures, but the chance is still microscopic. When he grasps just how absurdly low the probability is, the prospect feels almost hopeless. The fairy bluntly tells him that pulling the lone EX grade would be harder than winning a lottery over and over. Still, she reassures him that the pool is finite, so repeated summoning can eventually exhaust a species. As an example, once every horned caterpillar has been summoned, that creature disappears from future draws entirely. Jinwoo accepts the logic, even if the grind still sounds brutal. He briefly considers settling for mid-grade summons instead of chasing the impossible. But he quickly rejects that idea because stronger summons are scarce and too valuable to waste resources on weaker ones. Even with the odds against him, he decides there is no better path forward. He steels himself and commits to tearing through summon scrolls until the rare target appears. With the fairy cheering him on, he begins the exhausting grind in earnest. Time passes into evening as his relentless summoning continues. By the time he collapses onto his bed, he is physically wrecked and convinced the process might kill him first. After 2 weeks and 140,000 summon scrolls, the ordeal has become a near-fatal routine. The strain shows on him, but he still has not given up. He has even rented a room near the player zone to mass-produce summons, accepting that it will leave him deeply indebted. Once he recovers enough to move, he turns his attention to the next step. The fairy wakes up eager to join him, still more interested in cream bread than the hardship they have endured. He heads to the Synthesis Center, a former hotel repurposed for players and summon management. Inside, he notes how ordinary buildings have been transformed to serve the new system-driven world. As he walks through the lobby, he reflects that this once famous hotel now exists for synthesis instead of hospitality. He takes a waiting ticket and joins the queue for processing summons. His number comes up as 125, confirming he still has a long process ahead. The fairy warns him not to make any mistakes, and he answers with calm confidence. When their turn is finally called, they proceed into the synthesis room. Jinwoo enters a high-tech chamber where the system can combine and upgrade summons. The fairy asks to be treated well during the procedure and throws herself into it enthusiastically. Jinwoo focuses on the interface, fully intent on improving her. The system registers Wind Fairy as the target for synthesis and prepares the process. Without hesitation, he confirms that she will be synthesized. A large number of lower-rank summons are consumed as sacrifices to fuel the upgrade. As the materials vanish, the fairy is enveloped in light and transformed by the accumulated power. The system announces that the synthesis has succeeded. The result is modest but real. Wind Fairy reaches level 21, and her intelligence rises by 2. Jinwoo is pleased to see progress at all, though he cannot ignore how little 140,000 summons bought him. The fairy proudly asks if she looks stronger, and he humors her while privately realizing the road to max level will be painfully long. A few days later, the story shifts to his management side. Jinwoo works at a computer in a much lighter mood than before. Trying to stay composed, he reports to Byung-jin with unusual confidence. Byung-jin reveals that a talent management team has been formed and promises to invest heavily in backing Jiwoo. He then asks for an update on what Baek Jinwoo is currently doing. The answer surprises him. Jiwoo is still opening summon scrolls non-stop. The surprise deepens when he learns Jinwoo also wants to spend the 150 million he received on more low-grade summon scrolls. Jiwoo explains that he plans to buy them below market price if possible, while management can delay taking its share. Byung-jin realizes Jinwoo is pouring everything into cheap, supposedly worthless summon scrolls and immediately reinvesting the returns. Jinwoo realizes the people backing him are planning something unusual, including buying his summoning scrolls for only half their value. Byung-jin is outraged by the low offer, but the older man treats it as a calculated move rather than an insult. He reassures Byung-jin that enduring this now will pay off later. His real aim is to help Baek Jinwoo grow into a national hero for Korea. In his mind, Jinwoo's future fame will make anyone associated with him politically and socially valuable. If that happens, even the strange creatures supporting Jinwoo will be seen as part of his legend rather than liabilities. The man imagines that backing Jinwoo early will guarantee him a far higher approval rating than he has now. He orders Byung-jin to follow the plan for the time being. He adds one more condition before ending the discussion. The arrangement must remain strictly secret between him, Byung-jin, and Taesung. Later, under a bright sky, Jinwoo continues his exhausting routine elsewhere. He sits surrounded by a mountain of used red scrolls, having already burned through more than 1,500 of them. When his fairy companion asks how long this can possibly continue, Jinwoo answers that he will keep going until they both die if necessary. That grim persistence is interrupted by someone approaching. Jinwoo looks up in confusion when a stranger greets him. The visitor introduces herself as Yu-jia from headquarters. She explains that she came because of the scroll purchase proposal sent to the congressman, and Jinwoo hurriedly tries to compose himself. Caught off guard, he struggles to process why headquarters has come directly to him. Jia reveals that after internal discussion, they decided to accept the deal Jinwoo suggested. More than that, they will buy his special exception scrolls at exactly the half price he requested. She makes clear that the offer does not end there. Headquarters has also decided to provide an additional 100 million under a talent management category, leaving Jinwoo stunned. As he eagerly agrees, Jia warns him that this support must remain confidential. She stresses that the money is being given because of the relationship between headquarters and Baek Jin-woo, not as a public arrangement. With that understanding secured, Jia politely takes her leave. Jin-woo watches her go, overwhelmed by how decisively the congressman's side has chosen to invest in him. Now holding fresh scrolls again, he decides to push even harder and force a breakthrough. By nightfall, he is still at it, alone in the park with the endless summons. His fairy companion collapses in despair from the repetition, while Jin-woo keeps tearing through the red scrolls. He refuses to stop until he pulls the two elusive EX rank summons he wants most: Drill Instructor and Explosion Dragon. Even as he gains more unwanted F rank creatures like White Snake, the constant failures are driving him numb. More useless insect summons pile up, and he begs fate to finally give him one of the rare targets instead. At last, he tears open another scroll with desperate focus. A burst of golden light erupts, startling him because it feels exactly like the moment Rambam appeared. Jin-woo instantly realizes this pull is different, and both he and the fairy are thrown into alarmed anticipation. The system confirms that he has obtained the EX rank summon Explosion Dragon Mage. A powerful red-haired mage appears, proving that his impossible grind has finally paid off. The fairy erupts in joy, convinced they have finally succeeded. But Jin-woo stops himself from celebrating, realizing this is exactly when he must exploit the streak. When the fairy questions him, he explains the idea of a drop moment, the brief chance that another good result may follow. He immediately grabs another scroll to capitalize on that momentum. Betting everything on the chance of back-to-back luck, he tears it open before the moment can pass. The gamble works, and the system announces that he has acquired the EX rank summon Drill Instructor. After all the failure and obsession, Ji-woo is so relieved he nearly breaks down. Then a new figure steps forward from the summoning light. Ji-woo stares in disbelief as the second long-sought EX rank summon fully materializes beside the mage. The summoned man appears confused by his surroundings, while the system identifies him as training instructor, an EX rank summon currently sealed. Jinwoo's excitement returns immediately when he reads that the summon's true worth lies elsewhere. That hidden value is revealed to be an extreme obsession with training, embodied by a drill sergeant-like instructor who treats everything as discipline. The system explains that while the instructor is not impressive alone, he grows stronger through training and can dominate other summons with sheer charisma, making him a support unit built to push the entire group harder. Jinwoo learns that if he gains the instructor skill, he will be able to unlock his summon's hidden potential and speed up their growth dramatically. Ramba immediately erupts with excitement at the prospect of that power. Jinwoo realizes this explains why Yoz could strengthen his own summons so much, and regrets not understanding sooner that he needed to grow stronger himself. Later that night, Jinwoo greets the armored summon he once called instructor, as if meeting an old subordinate again. The knight is startled by the familiar title and begins to suspect who Jinwoo really is. When Jinwoo calmly confirms that he is Jinnigod, both the knight and Pokryong are left stunned. The knight drops to one knee, overwhelmed that his lord has returned to him. Jinwoo reflects that after being sealed away and separated from them, he has finally reunited with summons he personally raised. The knight formally offers his respect and says it is an honor to serve Jinwoo again. Pokryong hesitates, still trying to process the impossible revelation. She finally speaks for the first time, asking directly if he truly is Jinnigod, astonishing Jinwoo even further. Jinwoo reviews Pokryong's status and sees that although she is only a sealed D-rank mage now, she is actually a human vessel containing an ancient explosive dragon. He notes that her current role is a fire burst attacker, but that once awakened through instructor, her power should expand far beyond that. He also recalls that her signature skill, Devour, permanently increases damage whenever Pokryong Wave defeats a boss-class enemy, making it absurdly powerful. Because that skill had never surfaced without an instructor, Jinwoo had once been the only one able to use Pokryong properly. Now certain of his identity, Pokryong joyfully rushes to him and admits how much she missed him. Jinwoo awkwardly but sincerely returns the affection, amused by her explosively cheerful devotion. He quickly orders both summons to keep his true identity secret in front of others and to call him Jinwoo instead, which they obediently accept. With the reunion settled, Jinwoo decides there is nothing left to do tonight but head home. He ends the night by choosing rest before dealing with everything else. Back at his apartment, the scene shifts from revelation to recovery. Jinwoo collapses into bed completely drained and falls asleep almost instantly. While he sleeps, Ramba and Pokryong sit with the fairy summon and quietly take in the fact that they are together again. Their conversation begins with the simple acknowledgement that a long separation has finally ended. The fairy teasingly asks whether she should call the knight Ramba and confirms that he and the instructor had only known each other briefly before. Ramba explains that he had already been active before the fairy was recruited, making him her senior among Jinwoo's summons. But he dismisses rank as unimportant and turns the talk toward what truly matters to him. Ramba bluntly declares that they are still far too weak to be of real use to their lord. He insists that even while Jinwoo sleeps, they must keep training so they can become worthy of helping him. He starts by putting Pokryong on the spot as the first to undergo training. Ramba orders her to sit, focus on sensing mana, and promises that once he awakens later he will unlock Devour for her first. Then he turns his attention to the fairy as his next trainee. The fairy immediately panics and clings to him, sensing that his idea of training will be brutal. Ramba tells her she must first build basic physical strength before she can train with him properly, horrifying her. When he reminds her that becoming useful to Jinwoo should matter more than comfort, she can only agree under pressure. His beginner routine turns out to be absurd. He orders her to start by swinging a frying pan 5,000 times. The fairy breaks down and desperately appeals to Jinwoo for rescue. But with Jinwoo asleep and unreachable, she is dragged off to face Ramba's merciless regimen alone. The next day, attention shifts to the association office, where a new problem emerges around Jinwoo's supply of summoned scrolls. A staff member informs her superior that they can no longer provide low-grade summoned scrolls because a direct order from the director has come down. The superior is surprised that the director is suddenly intervening in such a minor matter. The explanation makes the situation worse. They are also demanding a detailed report on how all of those low-grade scrolls have been used. She quickly concludes that Assemblyman Im Hee-soo is likely behind the pressure campaign. As they worry over the report, another concern looms that if management withholds the scrolls, they will have nothing left to give Jinwoo. The timing is especially bad because the next delivery is almost due. That realization hits hard, making clear that Jinwoo is about to be caught in the fallout. The superior abruptly decides on a new course regarding Jinwoo. When asked what he means, he reveals that he no longer intends to keep supplying low-grade summoned scrolls. He concludes that Jinwoo has outgrown them and should receive something else instead. With that decision made, he prepares to replace the old arrangement with a new offer. Hee-soo cuts off Black Jinwoo's financial support, saying he has already gotten what he wanted and now intends to settle things with him personally. With that decision made, he heads to Gwanaksan Mountain near Seonbui Station in Gwacheon, where a dungeon has appeared. After arriving, he catches his breath and takes in the place. He quickly judges the site to be an ordinary dungeon rather than anything exceptional. Reviewing Bixio's dungeon system, he recalls that daily dungeons are routine resource sites tied to the day's schedule. He also remembers the Tower of Trials, a far harsher challenge where the rewards are high but death is a real possibility. Another category is the Chaos Demon Dragon, a raid dungeon that can only be tackled with a full party. Since that raid system has not been updated yet, he sets it aside and focuses on the current situation. Everything else falls under normal dungeons, which is exactly what he came here to enter. As he walks toward the gate, he notes that these were once called stage dungeons in Bixio, but in reality they spawn at random. Although parties can be formed through listings, he has no intention of waiting around for one. He approaches the active gate while checking his phone one last time. At the site, the portal is already secured and monitored, with entry restricted through official control. Knowing that leaving a dungeon unattended too long can trigger a dungeon break and unleash monsters outside, he decides to clear it quickly. A guard stops him and demands proof that he is licensed to enter. Hee-soo calmly hands over his hunter identification for inspection. Once his credentials are confirmed, he is cleared to proceed. Ignoring the guard's warning to stay safe, he steps straight into the portal. The world shifts as the dungeon accepts him. He steadies himself and prepares to assess the interior. When the surroundings come into focus, he realizes he has entered a battlefield-like environment rather than a simple monster den. The sounds of violent impact make it clear that combat is already underway inside. Seeing armored humans fighting orcs, he understands that this dungeon is built around an ongoing war scenario. The setting resolves into a full subjugation dungeon, with a fortress under assault by enemy forces. The defenders are in crisis, shouting orders to stop the orcs climbing the walls and to repel them with fire and boiling water. As the siege intensifies, soldiers and attackers alike throw themselves into the fight with lethal desperation. Hee-soo is struck by how different this feels from the game version he remembers, because here the violence no longer feels abstract. An orc tears into a knight at close range, proving that the danger is immediate and brutally real. The wounded begin piling up, and the defenders desperately call for healers as their line falters. Watching from the wall, Hee-soo confirms to himself that this is not a simulation but an actual war unfolding around him. He forces himself to focus, deciding to do what he always does and bring the chaos under control. He activates his summoning power, opening a magical field around him. A wind fairy answers first, ready to take orders. He follows by calling stronger allies as well, including a drill instructor and an explosive dragon mage, all at X rank. His summoned force assembles around him, instantly shifting the balance of power on the battlefield. He adds more support with a dark rank golden fairy and a mini Kong, while noting that his current lineup is still more offense heavy than ideal. He orders the wind fairy to buff the instructor's attack speed, and she eagerly complies. He then directs the dragon mage to provide covering fire from the rear, and she accepts him as master and prepares to act. Finally, he sends mini Kong straight at the orc boss to end the fight at its source. He explains that subjugation dungeons like this are structurally simple. Defeat the giant orc commander, and the whole scenario collapses. Mini Kong launches himself into the enemy position with overwhelming force. The giant orc boss remains standing after the impact, but Hee-soo stays confident that bringing this one enemy down will finish everything. The boss immediately counters, raising his weapon to crush the summoned beast. His strike lands hard, showing that Mini Kong cannot simply overpower him in one exchange. The wind fairy panics and urges a stronger follow-up attack. In response, the drill instructor moves in with cold precision. A second, sharper blow crashes into the battlefield with far greater control and force. The instructor descends through the debris like a professional executioner, taking over the fight at close range. Watching this, Hisu realizes that an X-rank summon operates on a completely different level from its base form. With that insight settled, he regains his composure and prepares to continue the battle on his own terms. A fairy-like summon drops into the battlefield and immediately judges the fight easier than expected as the monsters below scramble. Watching from above, the soldiers realize the summons are tiny but far stronger than they look, and their fear shifts toward whether they will survive this assault. One enraged beast lunges in desperation, trying to break the momentum with a direct attack. Instead, the fairy calmly boosts her allies, restoring their health and reinforcing their advantage. The summons bicker midair like unruly children, turning the battle into chaos rather than a desperate struggle. Their master scolds them for fooling around, but even his reprimand comes as they casually crush another enemy. At the same time, the red-haired mage begins a serious spell, gathering fire around her staff. She commits to the cast and unleashes her attack without hesitation. A massive wave of flames surges outward, swallowing the battlefield in a sweeping arc. The spell takes the shape of a blazing dragon, turning raw fire into overwhelming force. The dragon-shaped blast tears through the monsters, burning through their ranks in one decisive strike. Even a larger, tougher demon is caught in the aftermath, suddenly exposed as the tide turns against it. Before it can recover, a swordsman closes the distance in a single explosive step. He cuts through the remaining threat with one clean finishing blow. The last enemy falls, and the battlefield finally goes quiet under the swordsman's control. A system message confirms the dungeon is cleared, and the fairy celebrates like the whole victory belonged to her. As the light of completion settles over the area, the team regroups around their master, the summons looking pleased with themselves. The red-haired summon happily notes that her level and intelligence have increased, proving the run strengthened her. The swordsman receives his own growth as well, becoming stronger and more effective in combat. Then the real prize appears, a reward scroll worth a fortune, and Baek Jin-woo is stunned that a few minutes of dungeon clearing earned him that much money. He quickly sees the bigger opportunity, and decides he needs to find the next dungeon immediately so he can keep leveling his summons while making money. That realization hardens into resolve as he sees a way to rebuild his life through relentless dungeon grinding. Baek Jin-woo fully commits to that path, determined to turn everything around by continuing this cycle without stopping. The story shifts back to the city, where that new ambition now has real-world consequences. Elsewhere, someone sits in frustration, weighed down by a problem that clearly has not gone away. A woman in a business suit presses him for answers, demanding to know how he ended up with a recruit like this and blaming another man for starting the trouble. In a tense assembly meeting, tempers are already high enough that an older official has to ask everyone to calm down. A smug executive named Lim Hee-soo pretends to offer budget advice, but his real aim is to undermine the opposing team. He openly mocks them for calling themselves talent managers when they cannot even secure a worthwhile recruit. He twists the knife further by pointing out that none of their past prospects ever reached the national team, humiliating the bearded manager. Lim dismisses their recent Tuesday dungeon record as meaningless, making it clear he sees their success as beneath notice. The insult lands hard, and the bearded manager burns with anger at Lim Hee-soo even while trying to stay composed. Still, he reminds himself that Lim's arrogance comes from results, because the man really has produced national-level talent before. Rather than keep swallowing the abuse, the manager decides to challenge him directly and asks what he would do if his own recruit reached the national team. Lim immediately turns the challenge into a wager, eager to make the humiliation official. He frames the bet around the national team's limited roster, proposing they wait and see whether this supposed talent can rise high enough to matter. The manager accepts on the spot, locking himself into the confrontation. The two men escalate into a formal contract, each convinced the other is about to be exposed as a fool. The woman tries to stop the fight, warning that their faith in Baek Jin-woo is not enough because he is still only a gamer. The manager admits Jin-woo is far behind the currently fostered rankers, but he refuses to back down. Even with that doubt hanging over him, he clings to one final conviction. He declares that he believes in Baek Jin-woo and is certain the young man's hidden potential will explode if someone finally supports him properly. Before that argument can settle, an assemblyman bursts in with urgent news. The interruption jolts everyone, and the room turns to find out what could be important enough to break into the meeting. The newcomer reports that the player they had been tracking for repeatedly solo-clearing D-rank dungeons has been identified. When he reveals the name as Baek Jin-woo, the manager and the woman are both stunned. The shock deepens when they learn this impossible record belongs to a player who has only been registered for a month and is clearing D-rank dungeons in under 5 minutes. The manager can barely contain his vindication, while the woman is left speechless by how suddenly his faith looks justified. He erupts in triumph, loudly insisting he had been right all along that Baek Jin-woo was extraordinary. With his confidence completely restored, he doubles down on that belief and celebrates Baek Jin-woo as the one he knew he could trust. As he expected, his instincts lead him toward a promising opportunity. Confident in his judgment, he recognizes that his talent for spotting value has paid off again. Back in his room, the result of that success settles into reality. Checking his account, he confirms a huge payout and quietly revels in it. He lets himself enjoy the fact that he has made 16 million won. He reflects on the brutal days he spent obsessively clearing low-rank dungeons to earn it. Those efforts had been dangerous and exhausting, but they finally produced a breakthrough. On top of that, he sold every intermediate summoning scroll he obtained and turned them into cash. Seeing the money as the reward for all his struggle, he feels that his moment has finally arrived. Instead of wasting the windfall, he immediately starts planning how to divide it. He sets aside a living expenses account to cover rent, utilities, and food. He also creates a savings account, intending to build long-term security with regular deposits. Even while enjoying how unreal his new income feels, he keeps thinking practically. Then he turns to the part that matters most to him. He creates a separate player account with a little over 6 million won left in it. That money, he decides, will be spent entirely on strengthening his summons. To him, cash is useful, but increasing his value as a player matters more right now. Since everyone eventually hits a wall in level progression, he knows stronger runes and summons are the real key to growth. He concludes that grinding daily dungeons efficiently is the only reliable path forward, and that he needs a stronger core summon to do it. With that in mind, he checks the player market to see what summons are available. What he finds catches him off guard. Even ordinary C-rank summons cost around 20 million won, far beyond what he expected. The prices only get worse, with B ranks averaging 200 million and higher ranks not even listed. He realizes the market is absurdly expensive, though the rarity of high-rank scrolls explains it. Rather than give up, he decides there may be another way. He places a call, choosing to rely on a connection instead of the market. Smiling, he reminds himself that this is exactly why having someone useful to lean on matters. At the assembly, his sudden request reaches the staff and causes immediate alarm. The director reacts with wary curiosity when he hears the player wants something. Once told the request came from Baek Jinwoo, the office erupts in surprise. The director instantly becomes eager, sensing that the player may finally be asking for support. He demands to see the details at once. The message turns out to be a purchase list of summons Jinwoo wants the assembly to obtain for him. The scale of the request stuns them, but they quickly understand that he wants every item on the list bought. The director realizes that if they had already secured those summons for him, even a C-rank player might be much stronger by now, so he asks what Jinwoo is offering in return. The answer is enough to stop him cold. Jinwoo will trade the time attack secrets for daily dungeons. When it is clarified that this means not just one special dungeon but daily dungeons in general, the offer becomes far more valuable. The director recognizes that Jinwoo is offering all of his knowledge, not a single trick, and sees how generous the deal really is. He accepts the proposal for the moment. Still, he says he must clear it with the higher-ups first. The approval process goes badly, and he explodes in frustration at the director above him. His outburst reveals a larger grievance. Bureaucracy and hesitation keep holding them back even when the country needs results. A colleague dryly notes that such passion would be admirable if more assembly members shared it. When asked what the director decided, he reports that they were told to prove they could clear the dungeon before asking for anything. That response makes the situation sound impossible, since summons are exactly what they need in order to clear it. He insists that if Jinwoo's information is real, its value is enormous, and condemns the leadership for failing to see it. Then a calm voice cuts through his anger and judges the whole situation disappointing. A female official points out that refusing to buy priceless information because it costs only 100 million is absurdly short-sighted. Addressing the assemblyman directly, she signals that she has a simpler solution. She proposes paying Jinwoo with her own money instead, leaving the room stunned. A middle-aged man suddenly realizes who Jin-ah is, and the recognition shocks him. He recalls that Yu-jia is no ordinary executive but the daughter of Dizong Group's chairman, raised at the very top of a chaebol family. Her polished education and elite upbringing make it clear she was groomed for power from the beginning. Yet instead of focusing on inheritance and corporate control, she became more interested in the player industry. The player she has been watching most closely is Baek Jinwoo. She knows he is far too capable to be a true beginner, and has even managed to strike a deal with the state. So she considers a bold move, creating a one-man management agency built entirely around him. She proposes investing heavily so his talent can be managed properly, completely unlike the current system. When the scale of the investment gives others pause, she calmly weighs the matter. Money is not the issue for her, so the cost does nothing to shake her resolve. She assures them funding will not be a problem, but makes clear there is one condition first. Before anything else, she wants to meet Baek Jinwoo personally and judge him herself. As she waits, she carefully considers how to approach the opportunity. Once she reaches a decision, she moves without hesitation. Jinwoo is invited in, while the staff around her treat him with unusual courtesy. He receives a direct message agreeing to discuss his earlier request in person, with the time and place already arranged. The speed of the response tells him headquarters is taking his information seriously, especially for a deal worth 300 million. He heads to an extremely luxurious restaurant, realizing he is being treated at a level far above what he expected. The lavish hospitality makes him think they are eager to keep his intel coming. But when he arrives, he is surprised to hear a familiar voice call his name. The person waiting for him is Yujia. Jinwoo is stunned because he has already seen reports describing her as Dizong's daughter with elite credentials and striking looks. He also remembers that she was once publicly discussed as a possible future global CEO, though she showed little interest in succession. Her reputation as a genius who joined player headquarters with honors makes her presence even harder to process. Yujia welcomes him warmly, and immediately checks whether he came alone. She reveals that this meeting is not on behalf of headquarters at all, but a private discussion from her alone. Over the meal, she explains that headquarters will likely be unable to support him much further. In other words, the institution is too constrained to fully back someone like him. She contrasts that with Park Chan-suk's aggressive support, but Jinwoo remains confident he can rise on his own if necessary. Instead of arguing, Yujia presents him with a different path and calls it a proposal. She begins by saying she plans to establish a new management company. Then she reveals the key point: the firm would exist exclusively for him. Jinwoo is caught off guard by the idea of a one-man management agency. Yujia argues that unlike headquarters, a private company can move purely for profit and act decisively when talent is worth backing. What she truly wants is a direct connection to exceptional talent and the freedom to turn valuable information into maximum returns. She offers not only Dizong's professional backing but full personal support for anything he may need. She sweetens the pitch by insisting that money is reliable and that she genuinely believes he deserves this level of investment. With that, she moves on to practical terms and says she will explain the contract details while also sending him to inspect the empty lot tied to the plan the next day. She even tells him to check the summons he requested, leaving him baffled because he has not signed anything yet. Yujia admits they prepared it all in advance regardless of whether the contract was finalized. She frames the premature support as a gift, and Jinwoo is left marveling at just how overwhelming chaebol wealth and influence can be. The story then shifts away from the business meeting to a mountain trail on a bright day. A pink-haired girl arrives there hoping her older brother will show up again. She complains that he has been distant lately, has not even called, and apparently now has a place of his own. Her grumbling stops when she notices someone passing nearby. She is struck by the sight of an elegant black-haired woman and is immediately taken by how beautiful she is. Then a nagging sense of familiarity hits her, as if she has seen that face online before. She searches her memory by mentally comparing the woman to social media posts. The match clicks when she recalls a highly popular photo of the same woman online. She realizes in shock that the woman she just recognized is Yujia. At dawn, the training ground is already filled with the sound of someone pushing themselves hard. A strict instructor demands even more, refusing to let the session ease up. While the exhausted trainees struggle to continue, the instructor insists growth only comes at the absolute limit, and Jinwoo forces himself into one more lap despite being spent. Jinwoo suddenly senses something approaching and cuts through the noise of training. He stops everyone from talking and warns that an unknown presence is coming closer. As Jinwoo catches his breath, Yujia arrives at the training site and finds him there. Their brief greeting makes it clear she expected to see him, and she notes that he has been training since early morning. Jinwoo downplays it as a light workout and introduces the companions around him as his summons and main allies. He postpones formal introductions, telling them to continue training while he turns his attention fully to Yujia. Yujia decides to begin with the gift she promised him. A system window appears before Jinwoo, catching him off guard. He learns that Yujia is proposing a player-to-player trade and is asked to review her offer carefully. The trade reveals an extraordinary package of summons and rewards, making clear she is handing over a major portion of her assets. Jinwoo recognizes the value immediately as the system confirms the trade can be accepted. A warning explains that abusing system trades can trigger deadly penalties, underscoring how serious and binding this exchange is. The full trade list shows that Yujia is transferring nearly everything she has to Jinwoo. After confirming the terms, Jinwoo accepts the trade without hesitation. The system completes the transfer, and the gift becomes his. He closes his hand around the result, taking in the weight of what she has entrusted to him. Jinwoo bows deeply and thanks Yujia, recognizing the trade as an immense and sincere gift. Yujia brushes off his gratitude and moves straight to the real reason she came. She produces a contract and proposes that they begin discussing business. She introduces the management firm Ubiek, a company built from the two of their family names. Her proposed ownership split gives Jinwoo 70%, herself 25%, and 5% to Assemblyman Park Chang-suk. She explains that the Assemblyman will stay at headquarters to support them from inside the system. She also plans to hire Byung-in and Tae-sip, while noting that 2 headquarters staff already resigned after she lured them away with triple pay. Jinwoo studies the contract but hesitates at how favorable the terms are to him. When he questions why she would give him so much, Yujia admits she is making a calculated bet on him. She says she only needs a solid 25% if, in return, she gets the freedom to maximize the value of that share. To her, formal control matters less than securing a strong relationship with Jinwoo himself. She decides this is the moment to set greed aside and strengthen their alliance for the future. Jinwoo signs the contract, accepting both the company and the trust behind it. Yu Jia is openly pleased that the agreement has gone through. With the contract complete, they shake hands and formally establish their partnership, with Yu Jia taking charge as director. Their meeting is interrupted when one of Jinwoo's companions notices something strange nearby. A sudden burst of light erupts from the forest, signaling an unexpected arrival. Jinwoo and Yu Jia turn toward the disturbance, confused by what is emerging. The confusion turns into alarm when something crashes down with a shrill scream. One of Jinwoo's summons rushes in to intercept the intruder immediately. The summons catches a pink-haired girl mid-fall, apparently dragged in by an active auto-hunting function. Hanging upside down and flustered, the girl recognizes Jinwoo and blurts out his name in disbelief. Back on the bench, Jinwoo tries to process the absurd interruption and prompts her to explain herself. The girl kneels on the ground, looking chastened and unable to meet his eyes. Jinwoo realizes she recognized Yu Jia and presses her on whether she followed her there like a fan. Her attempt to call it curiosity is immediately exposed as exactly the same thing. When Jinwoo asks if she secretly watched after seeing Yu Jia, a status effect forces brutal honesty into the conversation. Unable to lie, the girl admits that yes, she did exactly that. She suddenly lunges at Jinwoo and demands an explanation, insisting there is no way he should know Yu Jia. Panicked and jealous, she bombards him with accusations about what he did and how he ended up with her. As the situation threatens to spiral into a full misunderstanding, Yu Jia steps in cheerfully, saying she had wanted to greet the girl anyway and revealing she already knows who she is. The pink-haired girl demands the truth at once, refusing to let the matter slide. Catching her breath, she prepares to explain what she has figured out. After a brief hesitation, she finally lays out her conclusion. She reveals that her older brother was once a famous gamer, and that he was the one who broke the low-rank dungeon record. He confirms it, and she connects that past to his recent visit to headquarters and meeting with Jia. She keeps thinking through the implications, trying to place everything she knows. He tests her reasoning by asking whether she is confusing it with another mobile game he used to play. She immediately rejects that idea, clarifying she means Battle of Summoners, while he quietly notes that she still does not know he is Jin God. Her excitement turns into contempt as she remembers the game itself and dismisses it as garbage despite his long history with it. She grumbles that this is what comes from buying cheap things, while he stays silent and lets her vent. Privately, he admits the issue is not distrust of her. What holds him back is the fear of what could happen if the truth reaches the wrong people. He remembers the family that cared for him for 3 years and decides he cannot endanger them carelessly. He resolves to become strong enough to protect them before revealing who he really is. So he tells her he had planned to explain eventually, but for now he needs her to keep it secret, even from their mother and father. She accepts that there must be a reason, while the others nearby remain awkwardly sidelined by the private exchange. Attention shifts as someone brings up the Shadow Elf, jolting the group back to practical matters. A memory surfaces of the Shadow Elf appearing in the field, prompting him to explain the next step. He says that if she wants to keep raising her rank, she should pair the Shadow Elf with the Shadow Wolf. He explains that the combination is efficient enough to land critical hits before the enemy can even act. She is stunned that such a summon exists at all, and he adds that the Shadow Wolf is only B rank. When she checks the market price, she is horrified by how impossible that B rank summon is for her to obtain. She keeps scrolling in disbelief, hoping she has misunderstood the listing. Unable to process the price, she calls out to him for confirmation. Showing him the listing, she points out that the Shadow Wolf costs 500 million and would take her decades to afford. He calmly tells her to wait. Then he promises to get it for her within a month, leaving her too shocked to take him seriously at first. She blurts out that he has become absurdly cool and starts to backpedal from her own earlier complaints. He rises with quiet confidence, fully aware of the impression he has made. He warns her not to get emotional when he actually delivers on the promise. As he walks off to wrap things up with the others, she watches him and feels that something about him has fundamentally changed. Left alone with that thought, she realizes her brother no longer feels like the same person she used to know. A week later, he arrives at a dungeon site with company staff as preparations begin around a red portal. A cheerful colleague presents him with new equipment, saying it is what he will wear for the company's day dungeon content. When he questions it, they explain that Ubiak Company's real business is selling information. That information includes premium clear videos of high-rank dungeons, locked behind paid access. They make large profits by selling those videos and related dungeon farming content. To support that business, they have prepared specialized gear for him. The outfit includes a hidden camera so his runs can be recorded from his body. They explain that once he wears it, every movement inside the dungeon will be captured for later sale. He tries the gear on and is surprised that it is lighter and more comfortable than expected. The staff finish the setup by adding dark glasses to complete the recording look. They quickly adjust the final details until the equipment is ready. With the crew announcing recording readiness, he feels even more pressure from being filmed than from entering the dungeon itself. He admits it is his first Monday dungeon and worries the run might not be clean, but the team reassures him they can edit around that. He thanks them, steadied a little by their support. His confidence returns at once, and he jokes that he might break the national record immediately after entering. The woman in charge is caught off guard, realizing he is joking only after briefly taking the boast seriously. She tells him to relax and simply fight the way he used to when he was still an active gamer, and he agrees. With that, he steps through the portal and begins the run. He recalls that the national record for clearing the Monday dungeon is about 7 minutes, and immediately judges that this run should be easy for him. As the red gate opens into the dungeon, he steps in with calm confidence instead of treating it like a challenge. He decides he can clear it comfortably, showing that he has already measured himself against the record. The dungeon reveals a bleak battlefield, setting the stage for a test he expects to control. He notes that the Monday dungeon rewards attack-focused loot, making it valuable for strengthening combat power. The system explains that attack stats dominate battle summons, while defensive and utility gear is treated as low value by most players. But this run is different, because he has entered a defense dungeon where survival mechanics matter more than raw offense. The enemy force appears as waves of undead, confirming that the dungeon is built around enduring a siege. Even so, clear time still matters because rankings reward players who finish faster than everyone else. The real shortcut is to kill the final boss, the Evil Lich, since defeating it ends the entire dungeon at once. Because of that, the standard strategy has become rushing the boss, and he checks his gear to make sure his setup is ready. Standing before the battlefield, he prepares to use a more deliberate plan rather than simply charging in. The system reminds him he can deploy up to 3 preset teams, giving him tactical flexibility. He confirms that he has already organized teams for different purposes, including player combat and day dungeons. For this run, he summons a combat sheriff, a battle instructor, and Mini Kong as his first group. He adds support by summoning Lion of Peace and the Dragon Gold Fairy, building a balanced formation instead of a pure assault squad. The dungeon announces that the Evil Lich's undead army is advancing and that he must hold out until reinforcements arrive. A 30-minute timer appears, making clear that this is a survival battle before the boss can be properly dealt with. The countdown begins and the undead surge forward the moment the battle officially starts. Mini Kong answers the charge by smashing into the front line and disrupting the first wave before it can surround them. He follows through with brutal close combat, crushing skeletons apart with overwhelming physical force. Mini Kong keeps tearing through the undead, proving himself strong enough to hold the line almost by himself. One surviving skeleton registers the sudden reversal as the defenders seize control of the opening clash. Seeing the team assembled and functioning smoothly, he signals the others to move out with him. Above the battlefield, the Evil Lich watches over the horde like a commander directing a war of attrition. Instead of waiting passively, the group advances across the field toward the boss while lesser undead close in around them. He gives the first order, taking command of the formation without hesitation. He tells the team to move to higher ground, choosing a position that will favor ranged attacks and control. Hungyo understands the tactical logic immediately, and restrains himself from rushing ahead recklessly. As they reposition, he keeps track of the battlefield and the timer, measuring how long the enemy takes to reach them. He concludes that the undead need about 2 minutes to arrive, giving his team a predictable engagement window. While the small mobs close in, Lion of Peace begins handling them with holy power, thinning the pressure on the group. Hungyo joins in from the front, cutting down incoming skeletons to keep the path clear. Mini Kong finishes enemies at close range by crushing their skulls outright. His roar reinforces the team's momentum, turning the defense into a confident advance. The combined melee and support attacks shred the lesser undead before they can become a real threat. Watching Mini Kong and Hungyo perform well, he feels reassured that his summons are more capable than he expected. With the trash mobs under control, he shifts his attention back to the real target, the Evil Lich. He orders the combat sheriff to get ready, preparing a precise ranged strike instead of wasting effort on the horde. He reflects that the sheriff's long range and accuracy are usually overlooked because the summon's damage is poor against normal enemies. That weakness had even made the summon seem useless in routine grinding, where its value was easy to miss. But in this lower-level Monday dungeon, the sheriff becomes ideal because the Lich's health is low enough for precision damage to matter. Just before the shot, he stops the sheriff from firing, realizing one more condition has to be met first. He orders Lion of Peace to cast Radiance and Blessing, setting up the debuff needed to expose the boss. Golden support magic spreads over the team as the sheriff steadies the rifle for the decisive attack. The blessing strips away the Evil Lich's dark shield, removing the long-range immunity that would have blocked the shot. Satisfied that the opening has been created, he gives the final go-ahead. The combat sheriff fires at the now vulnerable boss exactly as planned. The hit lands cleanly, and the Lich is reduced to a helpless, defeated state almost comically fast. With the boss neutralized, the battle swings decisively in his favor and his strategy proves far more efficient than the usual brute force approach. A giant ape-like summon launches into the air as undead swordsmen close in, turning the battlefield into a chaotic clash. The beast crashes down headfirst with overwhelming force, using brute impact to break the enemy's momentum. Surrounded by skeletal attackers, it plants itself as the frontline shield while ranged support continues from behind. Even as blades strike its body, the summon pushes through the damage and keeps holding the line. At the rear, a fairy-like support caster begins channeling healing magic with precise hand movements. She extends that magic toward the battlefield, preparing to sustain the tank through the swarm. A hooded healer joins in prayer, reinforcing the ape's summon so its health steadily recovers under fire. Meanwhile, a masked sniper calmly keeps firing into the undead, adding constant chip damage from safety. Watching this, the strategist notes, with relief, that the formation is working as intended. He judges that the Lich's side is taking less damage than the others, but their health is still being worn down. He explains that ordinary rune summons are weak and slow to level, which is why most players avoid relying on them. The Lich reacts, sensing that something about this battle is not following the usual rules. Its unease grows as it realizes the enemy setup is far more coordinated than expected. The strategist points out that under normal conditions this kind of slow attrition would take far too long, even with healing keeping the frontline alive. Still, the ape's restored health proves the team can maintain pressure instead of collapsing. Then the strategist reveals there is a decisive exception to the normal limits. A shadowy undead lunges from above toward the frontline, trying to break the formation with a sudden strike. The Lich's forces press the attack, expecting the ambush to succeed, but the young man in command remains completely composed, as if he has already accounted for this. He states that those limitations only apply to ordinary players, not to him. In the instant the undead closes in, a sword intercepts it before it can land the blow. He reveals his trump card. By awakening Hungyo's hidden potential, he can push these summons beyond their normal performance. With their runes and skills properly developed, his team's power spikes enough to turn the fight outright. The sniper's upgraded shot becomes lethal, and he declares that even a top-tier Lich can be dropped by a single bullet. The empowered round tears through the Lich before it can recover or defend itself. The Lich's body buckles and begins to fail, its dominance shattered in one hit. Moments later it collapses completely, leaving the remaining undead stunned and leaderless. The dungeon immediately registers a clear, and the support summons drift down as the battle ends in victory. System notices announce not only a clear but a new South Korean record and a special achievement, while the strategist jokes about the absurd efficiency of his method. Outside the dungeon, a woman in a suit studies the rankings and remarks that he really did start the Monday dungeon challenge. She notes it has only been a week since she gave him the summons, yet she still intends to back him even if he fails later. Her subordinate agrees, but remains uneasy about what comes next. He wonders whether Baek Jinwoo truly plans to replace every daily dungeon record, catching her attention. He admits that breaking Tuesday's record is impressive, but points out that Jinwoo has not explained how he will clear the rest. Since no Korean player has beaten all the veteran foreign record holders in over a year, he suspects Jinwoo may just be bluffing. The woman cuts to the heart of it and asks whether he is actually worried. That question leaves him visibly rattled, because it exposes more than he intended to say. She answers for him with a smile, saying the venture was built with her own money anyway. Then she makes the power dynamic explicit. Even if his fears come true, she can protect the careers of the people who chose to follow her. She treats the whole situation as ideal for her, openly enjoying the freedom and leverage her position gives her. Her subordinates are left speechless by how casually she turns risk into personal amusement. When she adds that their salaries will not change, one of them is so overwhelmed with relief that he practically pledges his life to the company. She calmly explains that she can make such promises simply because she has the authority to do so. Then her thoughts shift back to Jinwoo, and her expression sharpens with suspicion. She reflects on the man himself, recognizing that his confidence and results do not match what he should be capable of. Her suspicion deepens into certainty that Baek Jinwoo is hiding something far more valuable than he has shown. She recalls how casually he talked about breaking records the moment he entered, as if success were guaranteed. That attitude convinces her he possesses some hidden key to these dungeons that others do not understand. Before she can pursue the thought further, news arrives that another record has already fallen. The stunned report confirms it is the Monday dungeon record, cleared in just 4 minutes and 44 seconds. A monitoring team is stunned when someone shatters the standing dungeon clear record by 3 full minutes on a first attempt. The mystery runner is identified as Baek Jinwoo, a name that immediately changes the room's mood. As they confirm his profile and compare it to Kang Jianho's old mark, the observers can only marvel at how overwhelming the result is. One woman watching realizes this is the breakthrough she has been waiting for, because a rookie breaking records on day 1 could transform her business. The shock gives way to certainty as she decides this is the moment to bet on. She steadies herself and starts calculating how profitable this new phenomenon could become. At minimum, she expects the venture around him to succeed, and if everything lines up, she believes Baek Jinwoo could become a massive hit. Meanwhile, inside the game world, Jiwoo surveys the field with his summons and prepares his next round of grinding. A portal opens, signaling another dungeon run. Before logging out, Jinwoo decides there is one more thing he needs to set up. He activates the recording function built into his outfit. With the camera rolling, he commits to starting his routine in earnest. He chooses to begin the combat grind and is prompted to use auto battle with his current team. Jinwoo notes that once a daily dungeon is cleared, auto battle becomes available in the BOS system. That means the more his summons keep farming, the more rewards will accumulate on their own. He immediately starts optimizing by sending the training instructor item into storage. Then he opens a summon interface, preparing a more specialized setup. He calls forth an EX rank wind fairy named Ramba. Jinwoo assigns Ramba to handle the Monday dungeon instead of the instructor, surprising her. He explains that the instructor's job is to train the rest, and teasingly asks if she wants training too. The idea of training sends the summons into comic panic, especially under the instructor's terrifying reputation. Their shared trauma makes it clear that the instructor's methods are feared by everyone. Even Ramba is haunted by memories of that training. So when Jinwoo hesitates, she desperately begs to be allowed to grind instead. Jinwoo agrees and expands the plan, deciding to clear the other daily dungeons while auto battle farms rewards in the background. He congratulates himself on building a routine with no wasted time, where grinding and training happen simultaneously. As he heads off through another portal, he leaves the Monday dungeon in Ramba's hands, and she eagerly accepts. But the moment he steps through, something unexpected catches him off guard. He arrives in the real world to find the businesswoman welcoming him personally. She praises him warmly and makes it clear she has been relying on him to deliver. She returns his outfit and confirms that all of the recorded footage has been safely saved inside it. Jinwoo thanks her, confirms he needs nothing else, and prepares to leave while her staff practically worship the handoff. She assures him the footage will not leak and that he does not need to worry about the press. Jinwoo surprises her by saying he no longer minds if news of the record spreads. What matters to him now is that his family be protected, since gangs are still active in Korea. He reasons that being managed exclusively by Yubiek should allow much tighter security around them. She accepts the request at once and vows to protect them even if she must use Dizong's power. Back in the game, Ramba immediately tries to avoid being sent out, clinging to a beast in protest. Her resistance is cut short as the dungeon action resumes. Jin was recorded Tuesday clear finishes in just over 3 minutes, another absurdly fast result. He reflects that he only used the Komodo for the recording, and that even this might already be world record pace. He starts theory crafting that with movement runes on the spotted Komodo and a speed buff from the Wind Falcon, he could push the time close to 1 minute after more training. Satisfied with the footage, he ends Tuesday's recording. With that done, he moves on to the next daily dungeon. Wednesday's dungeon opens in a frozen wasteland, and Jinwoo immediately notes its defining gimmick. The problem is not the enemies at first, but the environment itself. The cold is so severe that it directly slows movement speed, threatening any time attack. Shivering badly, Jinwoo realizes he needs a countermeasure before he can race this dungeon. He summons a frost cat for cold resistance, and a wind falcon for speed support. He also brings out a titanium golem, a horned fairy, and his EX rank explosive dragon mage to build a specialized team. The frost cat proves essential, because among his summons it offers the best protection against the dungeon's freezing debuff. With the cold resistance in place, Jinwoo can finally function without being crippled by the weather. He scouts ahead to see what kind of enemies the dungeon will throw at them. A pack of white-furred monsters charges in, confirming the dungeon is built around relentless pursuit in the snow. Jinwoo immediately chooses the titanium golem as the core of his strategy. He strengthens the golem's shield, turning it into a moving fortress. Then he orders the Wind Falcon to provide a movement speed buff so they can still advance quickly despite the cold. The Falcon settles onto the golem as the support effects take hold. Jinwoo and his party climb aboard the golem, using it as both transport and protection. The golem charges forward with the whole team riding on it, converting a slow snowfield into a straight-line rush. Even so, the ride is rough enough to leave Jinwoo and his mage looking strained. Jinwoo admits the method is thrilling, but not exactly comfortable. As the golem barrels on, he starts getting dizzy from the violent motion and can only endure it for the sake of speed. The pursuing monsters keep closing in, forcing the team to maintain the reckless pace. Projectiles rain down through the blizzard, but the golem continues to carry them through the danger. Jinwoo praises the titanium golem as the perfect tank for this kind of run. Then he spots a shortcut that ordinary movement would never allow. The golem smashes through the terrain instead of following the normal route. By taking a path only the titanium golem can traverse, Jinwoo cuts away a huge amount of travel time. As they approach the boss area, he tells the explosive dragon mage to prepare her finishing attack. She focuses at once, understanding that the run will hinge on a single decisive blast. The golem punches through the last obstacle and breaks into the final chamber. It launches the team into position with one last burst of momentum. A boss warning appears as an enormous white beast enters the field. The monster roars amid crackling ice, announcing itself as a serious threat rather than a routine target. Jinwoo instantly calls on the Horned Fairy to begin the setup. She darts forward to apply her support effect before the boss can fully engage. The boss hardens itself with icy power, trying to overwhelm them before they can finish their combo. Jinwoo does not hesitate and orders the explosive dragon mage to fire immediately. She unleashes a massive spell while Jinwoo braces behind the golem's protection. The attack takes the form of a blazing dragon-shaped torrent of fire. The inferno sweeps across the battlefield and crashes straight into the boss. The beast is engulfed and screams as the flames tear through it. The boss falls, and Wednesday is cleared in 4 minutes and 22 seconds, giving Jinwoo yet another record. After the fight, the team regroups in the snow while Jinwoo checks the result with satisfaction. He happily confirms that he has set another new best time. The triumph is immediately undercut by the aftereffects of the ride. Jinwoo collapses from motion sickness, joking bitterly that this was not ordinary nausea but golem sickness. Soon after, the news breaks publicly that a new South Korean record has been set in the Wednesday dungeon by Baek Jin-woo. People start seeing his name on their phones and asking who this sudden record breaker is. Others quickly connect him to the earlier Tuesday clear and realize the same unknown player is doing this repeatedly. Within no time, the entire country begins paying attention to Baek Jin-woo. Conversations spread as people remember that he was already the one who beat Kang Jian-ho's record on the community board. The fact that he has done it again only deepens the shock. Speculation grows because he does not seem to be a famous ranker, yet he is suddenly dominating multiple daily dungeons. Articles pile up about him breaking Monday's record. Then more headlines announce the collapse of Tuesday's barrier and Wednesday's time attack record, turning his streak into a national sensation. With everyone watching him now, the public starts wondering whether he will conquer Thursday next. In a political office, a director realizes this Baek Jin-woo is the same player Assemblyman Park Chang-suk once mentioned. He remembers that this was the man who offered information in exchange for summons, an offer Assemblyman Lim Hee-soo had opposed. A subordinate confirms it and recalls that they dismissed him because he demanded payment only after receiving the information. Now that Jin-woo's achievements are public, the director admits the information appears to have been genuine after all. That realization leaves him sweating as the political implications sink in. He can already imagine rivals using this success to prove that Lim Hee-soo made the wrong call. Still, he decides that in politics only the final result matters. He bitterly concludes that if they had backed Baek Jin-woo, they could have gained both public praise and more votes. Instead, he judges that Lim Hee-soo let a blessing slip away through poor instincts. He turns to his secretary with a new order. This time, he wants Baek Jin-woo contacted directly. He admits they mistook Jin-woo for a fraud, but now they need to win him back somehow. Back in the game, Jin-woo reviews the reward structure and notes that Monday and Wednesday dungeons mainly provide runes. He also notes that Tuesday gives abrasives, making each day useful for a different part of his growth plan. Then he steps into Thursday's dungeon to continue the cycle. He enters with the drill instructor beside him, ready to test the next route. Thursday's dungeon is explained as the source of skill books, though not the unique summon skills only the instructor can unlock. That means it still has value for general development, even if it cannot replace training. The instructor's presence reinforces that this run is about practical gains rather than special breakthroughs. Because Thursday and Sunday both give skill books, Jin-woo decides he can skip Sunday entirely and treat it as a rest day. He is pleased by that efficiency, especially since Thursday is supposed to be the easier option. Relieved that he no longer has to repeat the same grind endlessly, he and Ramba enjoy the idea of taking Sundays off. But the moment he starts asking what makes Thursdays so easy, warning alerts erupt around him. He discovers the catch immediately. This dungeon throws the boss at you the instant you enter. The boss is a dirt golem with absurdly high defense, making brute force inefficient for most players. Normally, the accepted strategy is to weaken that defense before trying to burst it down. The standard method uses a B-rank White Wolf with a defense reduction skill, but Jin-woo has no intention of following the usual script. Instead, he assembles his own elite team, bringing out the mage, the falcon, the instructor, and Ramba around the golem. The titanium golem plants itself in front as the foundation of the formation. Jin-woo decides that overwhelming damage can replace textbook strategy if the team is strong enough. That realization also tells him this footage is useless as a commercial guide, because no ordinary player could copy it. He jokes to himself that this is less a tutorial than a ridiculous recipe requiring top-tier summons from the start. Even so, he notes that if he wanted to explain the orthodox method, it would simply be lowering defense first, and then using a damage-heavy lineup. There are real tips for record breaking here, but his own answer is much simpler: titanium. He explains that the dirt golem's true weak point is its head, and that his plan is to strike it directly. That is exactly why he brought the titanium golem, whose sheer size lets the team attack from the right angle. The Wind Falcon powers up again to support the assault. Ramba also joins the offensive setup, no longer trying to avoid work. Jin-woo gives the decisive order to the Blast Dragon and the Drill Instructor. He tells them to focus everything on the boss's head. The titanium golem slams into the dirt golem and opens the way for the strike. The Drill Instructor follows through with a brutal close-range assault that tears into the boss's upper body. He lands on the target itself, turning the opening into a direct execution setup. The instructor pins the position while the boss tries to retaliate. Before it can recover, the dirt golem's head is blasted apart under the concentrated attack. The explosive dragon mage completes the combo by drawing out another devastating fire spell. She condenses the flames into a focused killing blow. Then she releases a roaring inferno that swallows the battlefield. The fire dragon crashes down on the already broken boss and finishes what the others started. When the flames clear, the dirt golem is reduced to a ruined stump, completely defeated. As the destruction settles, the mage steps forward through the burning aftermath, signaling that Thursday's supposedly easy boss has been utterly overwhelmed. Baek Jin-woo clears the dungeon by defeating the boss and sets a new record with a 5-minute clear. Pleased with the result, he notes that they beat the Korean record by a full minute. Watching the drill instructor perform, He concludes that this summon is overwhelmingly strong. He decides, however, not to rely on the drill instructor as the core strategy for his target dungeon. Instead, he reasons that even a single properly raised blast dragon could solve the problem. He imagines that with a top-tier dragon, even the hardest dungeons could be finished almost instantly. Thinking ahead, he estimates that with entry and exit included, future runs might take only around 10 seconds, and he praises his companion's help. As he looks upward, he seems to settle on trying again. He commits to one more run before moving on. Later, he emerges from a portal back in the city. Before he can leave, someone stops him and confirms that he is Baek Jin-woo. Two suited officials introduce themselves and approach him formally. They identify themselves as members of the director's direct secretariat. Recognizing the affiliation, Jin-woo listens to what they want. The officials begin to explain that headquarters has reviewed the proposal he submitted earlier. They say his recent results have made the leadership view that proposal favorably. Jin-woo immediately understands what they mean and cuts them off before they can continue. With a polite smile, he dismisses the discussion outright. The official tries once more to frame it as a positive review of Jin-woo's proposal. He adds that Jin-woo's proven performance has improved their opinion of it. Jin-woo again shuts the offer down without hesitation. The two men are left stunned, unable to process being refused so quickly. Jin-woo's reaction makes clear that he finds their sudden interest laughably opportunistic. In his mind, the choice is obvious. He trusts Ujaya and rejects the headquarters side trying to buy him over at the last minute. Annoyed, he sees through their polished wording and judges them to be acting against Ujaya's interests. One of the officials nervously tries to continue with another point. Jin-woo cuts that off too, declaring that he has already signed with the company and that any further business should go through Ujaya of YB Agency. He leaves them with a casual farewell, while the officials are thrown by the unfamiliar company name. As he walks away, they call after him, trying to understand what YB Agency is. They begin to suspect that the Ujaya he mentioned may be connected to D-Zone Group. By the time they decide to investigate later, one of them realizes they may have just let a huge opportunity slip away. Elsewhere, a message thread reveals someone sending Jin-woo emotional late-night confessions about love and regret. The story shifts forward under a calm city sky. Jin-woo stands alone on a rooftop, having chosen a private place for his next step. Satisfied with the location, he prepares to begin training there. He recalls that the Friday dungeon was different from the others because it required him to personally run through it rather than letting summons do the work. That memory reinforces the need for direct practice instead of relying entirely on his creatures. So he resolves to start training in earnest. He summons Sky Wyvern, now at rank B, bringing the dragon into the open air above the rooftop. Facing the newly summoned Wyvern, he steadies himself for what comes next. Looking down from the rooftop height, he admits the situation is still frightening even with protection. He addresses the Wyvern by name, and it responds attentively. Jin-woo reaches out and makes contact, beginning to build familiarity with the creature. Once mounted, he asks if the Wyvern is ready to take off. The Wyvern launches into the sky with Jin-woo on its back, beginning a high-speed flight lesson. At first, the sudden acceleration leaves Jin-woo tense and overwhelmed. Then he realizes he is no longer just enduring the ride but actually adjusting to it. As they soar over the city, his fear gives way to exhilaration. Jin-woo discovers that flying the Wyvern is far more enjoyable than he expected. Embracing the thrill, he urges Sky Wyvern onward and commits fully to the training. Off the coast of Yangyang, the group arrives at the sea to continue Jin-woo's training. One of his companions respectfully reports in as they gather on the beach for the next lesson. The armored man bluntly praises Jin-woo's natural talent for mounted movement, insisting his balance and control are exceptional. Jin-woo accepts the compliment once the red-haired girl backs it up as simple fact. She recalls how disastrous his first attempt at riding a wyvern had been, making clear how much he has already improved. Delighted by his progress, she hails him as a true master, while he awkwardly tries to deflect the praise. Putting the embarrassment aside, Jin-woo moves the training forward. He confirms that their next exercise will be sky dolphin riding practice. His two companions eagerly promise to keep teaching him until he can move through the air as freely as they do. After several more days of training, Jin-woo enters the Friday dungeon. The dungeon reveals itself as a timed obstacle course laid out like a giant digital race track. He recognizes it as a special rune dungeon built around unique rewards and speed challenges. Remembering that this place helped earn him his reputation for time attacks, he prepares seriously as the run countdown begins. He summons Wind Falcon and immediately asks for a speed enhancement. Buffed and focused, he crouches at the starting line. As the route markers appear ahead, he studies the course in an instant. By the final second, he has already locked onto the path he wants to take. The moment the start signal sounds, he explodes forward. Projectiles begin raining down from above, turning the race into a live-fire gauntlet. He slips through the barrage at full speed without losing momentum. Even when attacks strike close enough to tear up the ground beside him, he keeps his line. As he follows the marked route, he realizes firsthand why this dungeon rewards precise movement rather than simple speed. He adjusts his stride perfectly across the safe tiles while the traps keep triggering around him. The danger only excites him more, because this feels far more real and thrilling than any game simulation. With confidence rising, he decides it is time to use the first hidden route he discovered. He aims toward the water section instead of continuing along the obvious path. He recalls that the normal strategy is to run across the water and keep advancing, but he intends to bypass that limitation. Rather than skim the surface, he dives straight into the sea. He commits fully to the shortcut, dropping beneath the course instead of over it. Mid-descent, he summons Sky Dolphin to carry out the plan. The water mount answers his call at once. The summon's cute appearance briefly undercuts the tension, but it is exactly the tool he needs. The dolphin crashes into the water with enough force to launch the maneuver into motion. Jinwoo realizes that by riding the Sky Dolphin underwater, he can ignore the obstacles clogging the main route above. Certain he has found the better path, he presses on beneath the course. Then he upgrades the shortcut further by calling Sky Wyvern from the water. From that point on, he no longer needs to worry about the dungeon's intended route at all. He transfers from the dolphin to the wyvern in one smooth leap. Now mounted on the wyvern, he shifts from underwater evasion to outright aerial domination. He decides to simply fly over every remaining obstacle between him and the finish. The goal comes into view almost immediately once he takes to the air. Seeing victory within reach, he surges ahead with confidence. He dives through the finish before the dungeon can respond. The run ends in a cleared dungeon and an absurdly fast completion time of 2.61 seconds. The system celebrates the result as a Korean record and a special achievement, confirming that his shortcut strategy paid off. After clearing the Friday dungeon, he moves on to the Saturday dungeon at sunset. This new challenge throws him into a burning battlefield filled with violent monsters and overwhelming chaos. He answers by unleashing a powerful Ice Alliance summon into the Inferno. The entire field is wiped clean, and the dungeon is cleared in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. By the time he reaches the Sunday dungeon, he notes with satisfaction that he cleared it just as quickly. Baek Jinwoo's party unleashes a coordinated finishing assault in the dungeon, overwhelming the Absolute Master with summoned power and magic. The boss finally gives way, its defeat confirming that the battle is over. A system announcement declares that the Absolute Master has been beaten and the dungeon is cleared, leaving the team staring at the aftermath. As the tension breaks, the group acknowledges how hard the fight was while crediting their training for carrying them through. A new notification raises the stakes further by announcing that Baek Jinwoo has broken South Korea's national record for the tower. Seeing his clear time, Jinwoo decides to keep grinding records and focus on growing strong enough for the intermediate tier. He sets his sights on the top tier dungeons and the next challenge ahead, planning to sharpen both his summons and his own skills. Even with his companions still lively around him, Jinwoo quietly measures the long road ahead and wonders whether 2 years will be enough. He pushes aside the distraction and turns his attention to the practical problem of what to do with everything he has earned. Reviewing his inventory, Jinwoo realizes he has accumulated a huge stockpile of high-grade summoning scrolls and other rewards. Elsewhere, attention shifts to the Ubiak office as news of his achievement begins to spread. A company representative calmly checks her phone while her staff works nearby, already aware that something major is unfolding around Jinwoo. The media erupts with coverage portraying Baek Jinwoo as a record-shattering prodigy, and the representative notes that the whole world is fixated on him. She finds the frenzy unsurprising, since he has broken every dungeon record in barely a week. She calls on Mr. Kim Byung-jin to report on the video editing tied to Jinwoo's runs. Kim admits he has finished the edit, but his hesitation makes it clear that the footage is not normal. When pressed, another staff member senses the issue immediately and asks what is wrong. Kim explains that the problem is not technical at all. The footage is so hard to believe that he wants the representative to judge it herself. He plays the recording of the Thursday and Sunday dungeons exactly as Jinwoo requested. The representative watches in silence as the scale of what she is seeing begins to sink in. The footage shows an overwhelming underwater battlefield dominated by Jinwoo's summons. What unfolds is so extreme that it seems almost unreal even before the result appears. The clear comes with absurd speed, proving that Jinwoo's strategy and execution operate on a completely different level. The representative is stunned into asking whether such a performance is even possible, while her staff recognizes it as something beyond ordinary combat footage. Kim worries that if they release material this unbelievable, people may reject it as fake despite it being real. The representative instead sees the footage as proof of just how incredible Jinwoo is and immediately starts thinking in business terms. Before selling the footage itself, she decides they should move first on the market connected to Jinwoo's summons. Her plan is to buy up every summon featured in the recordings before the public catches on. She openly confirms that she intends to corner the market and maximize profits using information no one else has yet. When her subordinate worries about budget limits, she orders him to purchase everything available anyway. She goes so far as to say she will personally take out a loan to cover any shortfall, showing how certain she is of the opportunity. Without wasting another moment, she begins executing the plan. Back at her desk, she moves with complete confidence, already treating the gamble as a calculated investment. At the bank, her aggressive push for funding leaves the staff scrambling to satisfy her demands immediately. Her pressure works, and the bank stretches her loan limit as far as possible while trying to keep her favor. With financing secured, she confirms that they have bought up the entire available supply of the relevant summons. Only then does she move to the second phase, selling Jinwoo's strategy information to players. She posts paid guides for the weekday dungeons, restricting access to registered South Korean players and pricing video guides far above the text versions. A subordinate questions why the strategy guides are being sold so cheaply compared with the summons they just hoarded. She explains that the low guide price is acceptable because it helps South Korea grow while serving a larger profit strategy. When asked how much they should charge for the summons themselves, she is ready with a far more ruthless answer. Her smile makes it clear that the real money was never in the guides. She sets the summon prices at 10 times the current market rate, shocking her staff with how high she intends to go. Her reasoning is simple. Once the guides spread, players will see how effective those summons are and demand will surge. As Jinwoo's featured summons become recognized as key assets, their value will rise on its own. Because her company now controls most of the supply, buyers will have little choice but to come to them. With the market trapped between rising demand and restricted stock, her scheme is complete. She posts the listing, satisfied that it is finally time to cash in on her investment in Baek Jinwoo. A quiet beat follows as the consequences of that decision begin to unfold. Watching the results come in, her stunned employees can barely believe what they are seeing, while she simply laughs, already enjoying the success of her gamble. A sales report reveals that total revenue has exploded to 377 billion won. The sheer scale of the number leaves everyone around it stunned, because it far exceeds what they thought this venture had become. The woman behind it reflects that the summons she bought from Baek Jinwoo for only 1.5 billion won have multiplied into this enormous success, proving how valuable his blessing was. She forces herself to calm down, trying to contain both her excitement and the chaos that realization has caused. Once composed, she declares that the business model works and decides it is time to move from testing into serious investment. Her first major step is to consider buying a building, showing she intends to scale the operation aggressively. Even while making that bold decision, she is reminded that the mess around her started because of Baek Jinwoo and the trouble tied to him. Elsewhere, Jinwoo spends a quiet moment in the park, checking the results of his recent dungeon grinding. His account balance shows more than 54 million won, confirming that the hunt paid off immediately. He is delighted that a week of selling high-grade summoning scrolls earned him this much, and starts thinking in simple, happy terms about what he can buy. He appreciates how profitable dungeon rewards are, but his companion reminds him to think beyond easy excitement. Lamba snaps him back to reality by asking whether he has forgotten the rare X-rank drop they were hoping for. That reminder brings back the memory of how many summons they tore through while chasing that one elusive result. He recalls being buried in a mountain of discarded scrolls after an exhausting, fruitless attempt. The memory continues with him numbly opening more and more summons while Lamba panics over the waste. The ordeal was so intense that both master and summon ended up feeling as if they were burning from the effort. Back in the present, Jinwoo admits they went through tens of thousands of scrolls and still failed to get what they wanted. Because of that, he decides that instead of buying more summons right now, he should strengthen the ones he already has. He also realizes he should sell off the junk items he has accumulated from grinding, and thinks of asking Yu Jia to handle it. With that plan in mind, he picks up his phone to contact someone who can help. As he opens Baek Ajin's contact, he remembers she once mentioned selling runes, which makes her seem like the right person to ask. The story shifts to Ajin, who is moving through her own day while thinking that valuable items will keep piling up anyway, so she might as well be the one managing them. Jinwoo quickly types out a message, deciding to reach out directly. Ajin is shown helping someone in need, and it becomes clear she has been using her earnings generously, even covering another person's hospital bills. She accepts the role with a warm smile, suggesting that helping others has become part of what she does with her success. Jinwoo's message arrives, asking if she can meet him for a bit. When he follows up by asking her to come to the vacant lot, he sees this as a chance to repay what she has done for him. Meanwhile, Ajin is out with friends at a cafe when her phone buzzes. Her friends are gossiping about her rumored new boyfriend, who they know only as a player, putting her under pressure to explain Jinwoo without revealing too much. As they tease her about how impressive he sounds and how lucky she must be, Ajin grows more uncomfortable. She lets out a weary sigh, already struggling to keep his identity and circumstances hidden. Her friends notice her mood and gently press her to share what is bothering her. They encourage her to open up, believing she will feel better if she talks. Ajin is touched by their concern, but she knows the truth is not something she can casually tell them. In her mind, Jinwoo is no ordinary boyfriend but the famous player everyone is talking about, and that secret makes the situation even harder. She panics internally, wondering how she could possibly explain that he even started a company to sell summons. Though she tells herself he must have his reasons for staying hidden, the burden of protecting that secret keeps building. Her friends continue worrying and asking after him, which only traps her further between honesty and secrecy. Inside, she is near her limit, frustrated that she has to keep everything from both her mother and her friends. For a moment she imagines completely losing control and blurting everything out. Before she can spiral any further, her phone rings and interrupts the crisis. The caller is saved as Mom's son, and Jinwoo's message tells her to come to the vacant lot if she can. The invitation instantly changes her mood, replacing stress with startled anticipation about what he wants to tell her. She abruptly announces that she has to leave, catching her friends off guard. To avoid suspicion, she apologizes and claims her brother called and that they were supposed to have dinner together. One friend remembers her brother was recently hospitalized and asks if he is doing okay, making Aegean's excuse more believable. Aegean seizes the chance, says she will explain later, and hurries off while promising to treat them next time. She heads to the vacant lot near the rocky park, where the meeting place sits quiet and empty. When she arrives, she is baffled by what she sees and can only wonder what all of this is supposed to mean. The answer is immediate and overwhelming. A violent battle is already underway, with blazing beasts and winged creatures clashing in a spectacle far beyond an ordinary meeting. A masked young man and a hooded girl race through the area together, already moving with the confidence of people used to fighting alongside summoned creatures. Their summons overwhelm a powerful enemy, showing that this pair controls unusually rare and expensive monsters. A nearby armored man realizes the masked fighter is the one who defeated his shadow counterpart, and immediately takes notice. That confidence breaks when he spots a pink-haired girl nearby, and his composure slips into startled embarrassment. The pink-haired girl is just as stunned to find him here, while he tries to act unaffected. She calls for her older brother, confused by the situation unfolding around her. Her brother appears shirtless from training, revealing a body far stronger than she ever expected. Seeing him up close only deepens her shock, because this is nothing like the sickly brother she remembers. She struggles to process how someone who used to be frail could now look this powerful. Her thoughts return to how he once lived in and out of hospital beds, making the change feel almost unreal. Noticing her stunned silence, he checks on her, unaware of how much he has just shaken her understanding of him. She blurts out the real issue instead, why he suddenly has so many summons around him. As she identifies them one by one, she realizes they are all top-tier summons whose market prices have recently exploded. That realization leads to a bigger question, because it makes no sense for him to possess only the rarest kinds. She recalls hearing that these summons were released from a game called Ubiek, linking his collection to a specific source. The mention of Ubiek catches his attention, suggesting the name matters to him personally. Her expression hardens as a new possibility suddenly clicks into place. She can barely believe the conclusion she is reaching. When she asks directly, he calmly confirms that he set the daily dungeon record using those summons. His calm answer only makes her more agitated, and she demands to know where he got such valuable assets. He reminds her of Jie, the woman they met before, prompting her to connect him to that encounter. She immediately recognizes Jie and reacts with excited admiration, remembering her vividly. Then he explains that Jie gave him the summons, leaving her momentarily blank with disbelief. She blurts out that gifts this expensive make no sense, and he confirms they did not come from any company. That answer sends her mind racing about how close he must be to Jie if she handed over treasures like these. Pushing past that confusion, she remembers why she called him and asks whether he still sells runes. When he says he sold some recently, she asks why, and he responds by showing her what he has been collecting. A large stash of runes and dungeon loot spills out before her, instantly proving he has far more inventory than she expected. He explains that all of it came from clearing dungeons and invites her to inspect the haul. She quickly shifts into evaluator mode, identifying rune types and judging their stat quality. As she spots a rare cleave rune with critical rate, she recognizes that some of his drops could sell for serious money. Watching her work, he realizes her constant rune dealing has given her a sharp eye for value. He reflects that she knows rune effects by heart, and can read market trends almost instantly. He also remembers how quickly she recognized his summons, confirming that she practically lives in the marketplace. Calling her by name, he draws her attention as she continues reviewing the goods. He offers her the entire lot to sell on his behalf, surprising her with the scale of his trust. After a brief pause, she decides she can handle it, and is confident she can sell everything well. She explains that she has done this kind of business many times before and knows how to move goods better than most people. He realizes that, unlike hunting, trading is where she is truly comfortable and capable. That makes him reconsider his own approach and think it may be better to focus on earning through sales instead of doing everything himself. She admits that making money through selling was the whole reason she started farming in the first place. Still, she hesitates over one practical issue before agreeing completely. She asks the question that matters most to her future: what commission he plans to give her. She makes clear that she cannot keep doing this for free, because she has to think about her own livelihood too. He accepts that immediately and asks her to name her price. She explains that major wholesalers usually take 8 to 10%, but because he is her brother she is willing to lower it. She raises one hand to signal the number she has settled on. She offers to take only 5% and asks if that sounds fair. Instead of bargaining her down, he rejects even that and suggests they treat this as something shared between them. His answer catches her off guard, leaving her startled by how generously he is approaching the deal. Jinwoo starts bargaining by testing a proposal. The pink-haired merchant is confused when he names a 20% share. He makes the offer explicit, promising her a 20% cut if she works hard and sells the items. She can barely process the number and repeats it in disbelief. Realizing how generous the deal is, she blurts out that he is offering her an enormous commission. Jiwoo treats it casually and says more profitable opportunities will come later, so she should be ready. That promise makes her immediately calculate how much she could earn if she sold everything and kept taking 20%. The thought overwhelms her with excitement. With her mind made up, she reaches a conclusion. She decides to stop farming runes and devote herself to being a professional merchant instead. Delighted by her new future, she embraces the role wholeheartedly. After leaving the rewards with a Jin, Jinwoo begins seriously training Porkyung in earnest. He focuses on developing her draconic magic. Porkyung unleashes a powerful fire technique, sending a dragon-shaped wave of flames through the dungeon. Jinwoo watches from safety behind a barrier, satisfied with her progress. He reflects that a strong damage-dealing skill is essential for becoming a strong player. He praises Porkyung for her performance. To reward her, he affectionately pats her head and notes that she is already strong enough to clear low-rank dungeons effortlessly. She accepts the praise with shy gratitude. Jinwoo notes that it has been a long time since the two of them entered a dungeon alone together. He assumes Hyukyo is handling the others well, while one of the other summons comically wishes Jinwoo had taken her too. Jinwoo leaves the rest behind with an easy confidence, and the group sends him off. He reflects that summons can remain active for hours without their player, and can even dismiss themselves, making them convenient companions. As he and Porkyung walk deeper into the dungeon, he brings up something he wants to ask her. He gently asks whether there is anything she wants. Before she can answer, a monster lunges at them from the darkness. Porkyung's focus sharpens instantly. She destroys the threat with a single burst of flame without breaking stride. Returning to his question, Jiwoo encourages her by offering examples of things other companions might want. He imagines simple preferences and comforts the others enjoy, trying to help her think of something personal. He presses kindly, making it clear he really wants an honest answer. Porkyung hesitates, unsure whether she should ask for anything at all. She finally admits that she is already happy just being useful to him. Jinwoo is touched, but he refuses to let her stop there. He coaxes her further, asking her to name even one thing she would like to eat. He explains that summons normally do not need food anyway. Still, he often shares meals with the humanoid summons, so wanting food is acceptable. He recalls how the others enjoy things like cream bread, and how they have developed their own tastes. By bringing up those examples, he tries to show Porkyung that having preferences is normal. He asks again whether there was ever anything she enjoyed eating. He guesses she might prefer something sweet, like dessert, because of her shy nature. Then he remembers there is one food she might want. He identifies it as chamek, fried chicken with beer. Porkyung repeats the unfamiliar word, trying to understand it. Jinwoo awkwardly admits it is excellent, then smoothly turns the conversation back to her training goals. Porkyung explains that the next technique she needs is the secret stage of draconic arts, a progression from link to change to flame to destroy. Jinwoo proposes a deal. If she masters it in a day, they will take a break from training. He sweetens the promise by saying they will all celebrate with chamek, and Porkyung eagerly vows to work hard for that reward. Jinwoo realizes she seems even more excited about earning a day off than about the chicken itself. In the end, he decides that as long as she is motivated to train hard, the reason hardly matters. 3 people survey a large empty lot, and the scale of the place immediately impresses them. The woman explains that she bought the land from her grandfather and intends to build UBX headquarters there. She starts assigning the space, marking where the office will stand and where staff housing will be built. She adds that every building will have bunkers, making it clear she is planning for protection as much as expansion. That emphasis on safety echoes a promise to focus on protecting someone's family. For her, this project is tied to keeping that promise no matter what. She stands firm in that decision, fully committed to seeing it through. Thinking ahead to the team's needs, she decides the open land will also serve as a training ground. She then asks Byungjin whether he brought the summon she requested. He produces a shadow wolf, a powerful creature she had specifically called for. When asked why she wants that particular summon, she makes it clear she already has someone in mind for it. Her quiet confidence suggests this gift is part of a larger plan. Later, the scene shifts to a meal where Ajin is out with friends. As the food arrives, someone calls to Ajin, drawing the group into conversation. Her friends enjoy the expensive meal and marvel that they get to eat somewhere this nice. They tease that Ajin must be living on a different level now that she is tied to a successful player. Ajin credits her brother for making that possible. She proudly explains that the items he gives her are not only plentiful but also exceptionally high quality and versatile. In particular, his item supply is so strong that it has become a major draw for others. That popularity has turned her into a hotspot for players desperate to buy from her and secure future deals. She adds that thanks to her brother, her customer base has grown rapidly, then casually brings up Baek Jinwoo. Her friends recognize the name immediately, and note that he has become famous for breaking his own records. Hearing them praise him, Ajin basks in it and quietly revels in how impressive her brother is. Her pride spills over into wondering whether they also see how handsome he is. The conversation shifts into gossip about Jinwoo's love life, and Ajin grows tense as her friends speculate about his girlfriend and even joke that he might be close to someone named Baek. When they wonder whether Baek Jinwoo has social media, one friend checks Jiayu's following list to investigate. A sudden discovery makes her pause. Among the accounts, she spots one that seems connected to a Jin. The others immediately confront a Jin after realizing Jiayu is following her account. Flustered, a Jin insists they must have it wrong and checks the phone herself. To her shock, the account really is Jiayu's, and Jiayu is indeed following her. A Jin panics, unable to understand when a celebrity she only followed as a fan started following her back. She tries to rationalize it by assuming Jiayu only knows her as Jinwoo's sister. Her friends are unconvinced and push harder, sensing there is more to the connection. The teasing escalates into a full interrogation as everyone demands to know whether a Jin and Jiayu actually know each other, and how close they are. Before a Jin can answer, her phone suddenly gets a message. She cuts off the questioning to check it, already uneasy. The sender turns out to be Jiayu herself, directly addressing a Jin by name. A Jin freezes as the situation becomes far too real for her to brush off. Jiayu asks whether a Jin is free the next day. The invitation overwhelms a Jin so completely that she can barely form words. She erupts in the middle of the restaurant, stunning everyone around her. The next day, the meeting happens in the city. A sleek car arrives, signaling Jiayu's presence before she even speaks. When Jiayu greets her after a long time, a Jin is so nervous she can hardly hold herself together. Jiayu warmly invites her into the car, and a Jin obeys instantly. Once a Jin gets in, the two leave together. Inside the car, a Jin struggles to start a conversation through her nerves. Jiayu gets to the point by asking whether a Jin wanted to meet because of her family, correctly guessing what has been on her mind. She reveals that she once tried to send gifts under Beck's name, but something about that attempt did not go as planned. A Jin is thrilled to learn that the company's CEO is personally delivering the gifts, and Yu Jia confirms it with calm confidence. On the ride over, a Jin takes that gesture as proof that her brother matters deeply to Yu Jia and feels touched by the effort. She keeps praising Jinwoo to herself until Yu Jia's silence makes her realize she may have gone too far, especially since she is talking about her own brother. Yu Jia shifts to practical concerns and asks whether a Jin's parents will mind an unannounced visit. A Jin reassures her that it is fine because she already told her parents to stay home for an introduction. She admits her parents know almost nothing about Jinwoo's current life and can barely answer even basic questions about him. With a laugh, a Jin bluntly sums them up as loving but hopelessly out-of-touch parents. Their destination turns out to be a modest apartment building rather than anything grand. They head up to the 5th floor. At the door, a Jin presents the place simply as their home. She calls out to her parents that she is back and has brought someone with her. Yu Jia quietly takes in the small living room and realizes how humble Jinwoo's home life is. The kitchen and dining area confirm that the family lives simply and without luxury. Even so, Yu Jia feels the place has the warmth of a real home. A Jin's parents come out, surprised to see their daughter return with an unexpected guest. Yu Jia greets them politely, while a Jin's father immediately jumps to the wrong conclusion and assumes she must be Jinwoo's girlfriend. Yu Jia introduces herself with formal courtesy instead of reacting to the misunderstanding. When she identifies herself as Yu Jiavu Beck, the parents are stunned by the name alone. Seeing their confusion, a Jin hurries them inside and promises to explain everything. Once seated, the parents struggle to believe what they are hearing. They try to piece it together. Their son is a famous player, and the woman before them is the CEO of his company. Yu Jia confirms that she is indeed from the Dizon group, making the situation feel even more unreal to them. The parents are overwhelmed that someone so important has come to their modest home, while a Jin realizes this is exactly how outsiders must see Yu Jia. Yu Jia formally addresses a Jin's father and draws his full attention. She explains that, as Jinwoo's company, Yu Beck has a duty to take care of his family as well. The parents can hardly process that this support is meant for them personally. Yu Jia places a document before them and asks them to review it. The brochure lays out extensive benefits, from a new residence and medical care to full living support. The number that hits them hardest is a monthly living stipend of 10 million won. As they stare in disbelief, Yu Jia gently urges them to accept the offer without hesitation. She frames it as a very small gesture compared with everything Jinwoo has accomplished. Then she adds that she has prepared an additional gift, leaving the parents even more bewildered. Yu Jia reveals that she also knows about the family's interest in summoned creatures. A Jin's father awkwardly realizes she must be referring to the little pebble golem he once received. Yu Jia selects another summon from her collection and says she prepared one for him too. A summoning light fills the room as she brings the gift into existence before the family. The creature turns out to be a B-rank diamond golem. Yu Jia explains that it is like the pebble golem but far stronger, and a Jin's father is delighted by the unexpected reward tied to his son's success. Yu Jia then turns to a Jin's mother and reveals that she has a gift for her as well. For the mother, she presents a rare B-rank rainbow snail prize for beauty and skincare effects. The mother is charmed immediately, and Yu Jia offers it with the thought that she would enjoy it. A Jin beams at how perfectly the gifts suit her parents. Yu Jia then says she has prepared something for a Jin too, catching her completely off guard. What appears is not a trinket but a powerful white wolf summon. A Jin can barely believe what she is seeing and wonders if she is dreaming. When she realizes the wolf is worth 500 million won, her shock turns into near panic. Even as her parents worry they may be accepting too much, Jin clings to the wolf and is already determined to become the best sister possible. Yu Jia watches the family's reaction with quiet satisfaction. The mother, unable to accept such generosity without giving something back, insists that Yu Jia stay for a meal. Yu Jia happily agrees and suggests a restaurant she already has in mind, leading them to a traditional-looking place. At a family meal, Jinwoo's parents reflect that the game he used to obsess over instead of studying may finally be paying off. His father adds that once Jinwoo commits to something, he sticks with it. His sister initially downplays it, thinking he has only been playing for about a year. That assumption is immediately overturned when she learns he has actually been at it for around a decade. Both sisters are stunned and press their father to confirm such an absurd amount of time. Their father explains that Jinwoo started back in middle school. He recalls discovering this after finding Jinwoo asleep while still playing late at night. Back then, he only caught the title of the game, Battle of Summoners. Seeing his son still glued to it even in his final year of high school had made him worry Jinwoo would neglect his studies. The pink-haired girl excitedly asks if this story is really true, while their father admits his memory may not be perfect. But the sisters realize that only one kind of person would keep mastering such a demanding game for 10 years. A shocking possibility forms in their minds as they connect Jinwoo to the legendary player Jinigod. They picture the feared in-game figure and begin to suspect their brother's true identity. The image of that legend resolves into Jinwoo himself, calmly holding the phone that hid his secret all along. The story shifts forward from that revelation to a later point in Jinwoo's life. Back in his room, Jinwoo reviews his current summons and their progress. His roster has grown stronger, with multiple units now upgraded enough to challenge harder content. After considering their improved levels, he starts thinking about moving up to the intermediate daily dungeon. Before acting, he decides to contact Jia first. He messages Yu Jia to ask whether she is free and whether they should prepare to record his attempt at the intermediate level next week. Jia responds instantly with overwhelming enthusiasm, making it clear she has been waiting for this chance. She immediately takes control of the plan, telling Jinwoo to prepare his gear while she handles the rest of the promotion. Her marketing campaign escalates into a full sales push, bundling low and intermediate dungeon content and even offering extra discounts to existing customers. Jinwoo is amused by how far she has already gone, but he trusts her to manage it well. He remembers hearing from Jin that Jia had even visited his home, something he never expected. She had personally looked after his family rather than treating them like a business obligation. That kindness won over everyone, especially his sister, who became instantly attached. To Jinwoo, Jia's sincerity sets her apart from the government officials who had approached him more coldly. He feels genuinely glad that Yubik recruited someone like her. A week later, the long-awaited intermediate dungeon run begins amid violent destruction. The attempt ends in success, with the dungeon cleared in just over 6 minutes. Jinwoo confirms that the intermediate Monday dungeon has been conquered and is satisfied with the result. Even as public attention around Baek Jinwoo grows, he remains uninterested in the headlines and focused on more practical concerns. What matters to him now is not fame, but a problem inside his own team. He turns his attention to Link, watching the red-haired summon who should be progressing further by now. Link admits she is struggling to master the ability called Link. Jinwoo notes that Pak Ryong has been acting strangely lately, which may be connected. A brown-haired companion suggests that Pak Ryong is deliberately slacking off. He explains that based on her mana and control, Pak Ryong should already be capable of using Link. Since she still has not learned it, he concludes she must be intentionally holding herself back. Jinwoo cannot understand why she would choose to do that. When asked whether Pak Ryong has mostly been entering dungeons alone with him lately, Jinwoo confirms that she has. From that, the companion guesses that Pak Ryong may simply be enjoying having Jinwoo to herself. He explains that summoned creatures naturally crave their summoner's attention. From Pak Ryong's perspective, growing stronger too quickly would change that relationship. If she masters Link, she would no longer be able to accompany Jinwoo alone into dungeons. Jinwoo pauses to think over that unexpectedly emotional motive. He finds the situation a little embarrassing, but also strangely touching. Still, he asks what he should do about it. The companion proposes solving it by changing Pak Ryong's training method. Jinwoo arrives with Yukio, and the fairy on his head calls out to him as the group gathers. Pak Ryong proudly reports that she has finally mastered Link, the support skill they had been trying to teach her. Jinwoo admits he had doubted it would work, especially coming from Hyukyo's plan. Hyukyo reveals the trick was simple pressure. Pak Ryong was told Jinwoo would stop entering dungeons until she learned Link. Jinwoo realizes the method was manipulative, but effective. Hyukyo's practical understanding impresses him more than expected. Instead of criticizing Pak Ryong for struggling, Jinwoo rewards her effort with warm praise. He deliberately chooses encouragement over blame. Pak Ryong happily accepts the affection, and Jinwoo decides there is no reason to be harsh when summons are essentially companions on a shared quest. Since the training succeeded, Jinwoo immediately turns the moment into a celebration. He announces a party for the Chimera team as a reward for their hard work, delighting the summons. He even hands over a card for living expenses, overwhelming Jiao with his generosity. The idea of skipping training catches everyone off guard. Hyukyo is especially stunned by the thought of an actual break. Jinwoo recognizes that Hyukyo has become so training-obsessed that rest feels unthinkable to him. So Jinwoo formalizes it as a rule instead of a one-time exception. From now on, whenever a summon learns a new skill, the group will stop training and celebrate together. The summons are thrilled, while Hyukyo protests that this is too lenient. Jinwoo counters that rest is also part of training, forcing Hyukyo to reconsider. Once Hyukyo accepts Jinwoo's logic, he fully commits to the idea and reframes the party as meaningful recovery. With that settled, the celebration begins in earnest with a toast. The whole group relaxes together, eating and drinking as the summons enjoy the rare break. Park Ryong is especially delighted by the food, and the mood turns openly festive because the day feels special. Watching the scene, Jinwoo asks how the others are doing. The answer is obvious. Everyone is enjoying themselves, which reassures him that the decision was right. Once the basic preparations are finished, Jinwoo's thoughts shift from celebration to his next objective. He resolves that it is finally time to challenge the Tower of Trials. The Tower of Trials is introduced as endgame content far beyond an ordinary dungeon. Its rewards are extraordinary, but the promise of treasure comes with a severe cost. The tower is infamous for its brutal difficulty and the countless players it has killed, making it a graveyard for challengers. Later, in a meeting, Jinwoo's decision to enter the tower shocks the woman speaking with him. She is alarmed that he plans to attempt the Tower of Trials already. Jinwoo calmly confirms it and says he only intends to go as far as the 10th floor for now. He notes that even the country's top rankers have only reached that level, treating the benchmark with surprising ease. She reminds him that reaching even that point has cost many lives, and that survivors describe the place as hell. Even so, Jinwoo remains composed and says this is the right time for him to begin. His calm confidence unsettles her because he seems far too relaxed about entering such a deadly place. Unable to reconcile his attitude with common sense, she jokingly concludes he must be some kind of transcendent being. She privately reasons that only someone who had already conquered the tower could treat its first floors so lightly. Still, she restrains her suspicions and decides to keep acting as if she knows nothing until he chooses to reveal the truth himself. She recalls that Jinwoo dislikes attention and had even asked her to keep his secrets from his own family. So she resolves to wait for him rather than force the issue, even if his behavior keeps raising questions. Jinwoo adds another condition. This time he will enter without any equipment. When she asks whether that means he also refuses to sell the tower data afterward, he confirms it. She understands his reasoning, since an EX rank challenge like the Tower of Trials is too exceptional to treat casually. Hyukyo's earlier advice comes back to mind. Beyond strength, the most important factor in the tower is communication. That warning exposes a problem for the summons, because some of them still cannot properly speak. Jinwoo realizes that if they cannot communicate clearly, they could become a liability while clearing the tower. After thinking it over, she decides there is plenty of time to profit from information later, so Jinwoo's wishes should come first. She agrees to respect his decision completely, and Jinwoo thanks her for understanding. Trying to make amends, the woman reaches for Jinwoo's hand and cautiously asks him for a favor. She steels herself and makes clear that what she wants from him matters to her. Jinwoo is caught off guard and asks what kind of favor she means. She explains that the national team selection match will be held in 2 months, bringing his attention to a major opportunity. She reminds him that this tournament decides who will represent the country in the World League. If he makes the team, he will be allowed to compete on the world stage by the end of the year. Jinwoo points out the obvious obstacle. Without belonging to a guild or headquarters, he should not even be eligible. She reveals that his lack of affiliation can be bypassed with an assemblyman's recommendation. In fact, she has already been lobbying on his behalf, arguing that a player of his level deserves the chance. Jinwoo admits he is confident he can clear the selection match itself. What worries him is surviving the world-ranked competition that would come after, given his current strength. Even so, he starts to reconsider instead of refusing outright. He remembers that reaching higher levels will require rare resources he cannot easily obtain on his own. Sensing his hesitation, she adds that national team members receive substantial support. She explains that the government is currently investing heavily in promising players, which immediately catches his interest. When he asks how much support, she makes it clear the rewards include a large supply of high-grade summoning scrolls. The possibility of even receiving a highest-grade summoning scroll shocks him into taking the offer seriously. Tempted by the rewards, Jinwoo agrees to give the selection match a try, and she lights up with relief. Overjoyed, she clasps his hands and thanks him sincerely for accepting. Her gratitude is genuine, and the tension between them softens into warmth. Jinwoo stays composed, letting her excitement wash over him. He confirms his decision, sealing their agreement. Soon after, his focus returns to training and to strengthening Yun. A week later, the two are back in a dungeon, continuing their preparation amid the aftermath of battle. Jinwoo checks whether Yun has grown used to fighting alongside him. The question makes her visibly nervous, as if she has been carrying something she needs to confess. Gathering her courage, she tells him there is something important he should know. She struggles to say it, clearly afraid of how he will take it. Yun finally admits that she enjoyed clearing dungeons with him so much that she deliberately hid the fact that she could already master him. Jinwoo falls silent, taking in the confession. Through tears, she explains that a reawakening has changed things, and now she must leave his side. Instead of blaming her, Jinwoo gently reassures her. He tells her she has nothing to feel guilty about and that he is grateful she was honest with him. His kindness catches her off guard and eases the fear she had been bracing herself against. He adds that it is only natural for her to spend the most time with the person she needs most now, and confirms that he truly means it. Then he explains why he can accept this so easily. To him, Yun is an exceptional X-rank summon, so her value was never in doubt. But he admits that what he really cares about most is the daily dungeon summons who stay with him constantly. By joking that those ordinary companions matter even more to him, he deliberately lightens the mood and spares her further pain. With that settled, he confirms that Yun is now comfortable enough with him for their current purpose. He ends the day's training and reveals the next step in his plan. He is going to challenge the Tower of Trials. At the tower entrance, security verifies that he is there as an official participant. Jinwoo presents his registration card without hesitation. Once his identity is confirmed, the staff begin explaining the rules and risks. They warn him that if he does not return within a week, he will be listed as missing, and after a month he will legally be treated as dead. Jinwoo accepts the danger without backing down. His only concern is whether his disappearance could become public knowledge. The staff assure him that the tower grounds are sealed off from reporters and civilians, so no leak to the media should occur. Relieved, Jinwoo thanks them, determined to keep his family from finding out. Jinwoo briefly imagines how proud his family would be if they knew he was challenging the Tower of Trials. That thought ends as the tower grants him entry through a dark portal. He accepts the trial and is sent off with a formal wish for a safe clear. The portal opens inside a guarded facility, and he steps through without hesitation. In an instant, he is transferred to a ruined city under a cursed sky. The moment he lands, he braces himself and tests the ground beneath him. Seeing the devastated surroundings, he realizes this floor is already dangerous. That suspicion is confirmed when a ghoul appears, making the nature of the enemy clear. The tower system informs him he can deploy up to 3 parties, so he must choose his formation carefully. Since he prepared in advance, he reviews the teams and the strongest rune setups he already assigned them. Satisfied, he activates his summons and battle support. His allies gather around him as he sends everyone into motion. The mission is revealed: escape the abandoned city of Chrome, now overrun by ghouls, while a curse limits aerial summons. He immediately starts adjusting his lineup to fit the floor's restrictions. Because flying summons are hindered and there is no water source, he dismisses the less useful aerial and aquatic units. He assigns Hungyo and Ramba to carry out the plan they had already discussed. Both respond at once, showing they understand their roles. They launch upward to scout and move ahead, with the fairies struggling to keep up. Jinwoo relaxes slightly, knowing those two are mobile enough to avoid being caught by ordinary ghouls. He judges the basic ghouls to be slow and weak enough that this first floor should be manageable. But he immediately warns himself not to underestimate them. A ghoul suddenly lunges with far more speed than its appearance suggests. Its attack smashes through stone without harming itself, proving its offense and durability are both extreme. He notes the real danger. Their claws are poisoned, so even a minor wound could become fatal. Rather than engage recklessly, he shifts into motion to avoid being surrounded. He concludes the floor is designed to kill careless challengers and orders his team to break through the alley first. As they run, he tells them not to waste time fighting every ghoul and to focus only on weak points that open their path. His party follows that command, coordinating support magic and direct attacks to clear obstacles instead of stalling. The rout erupts in destruction as they punch through the horde with concentrated force. Jinwoo keeps moving, confident that the first floor remains easy as long as its rules are understood. When the scouts take longer than expected, he starts wondering what delayed them. Hungyo returns with a map, announcing that he found what they needed. Jinwoo praises him and immediately gathers the others around the discovery. The group studies the map together, shifting from survival to route planning. Using the cathedral as a landmark, Jinwoo begins pinpointing their position. He identifies exactly where they are on the map. That reveals the real obstacle. The exit is close, but a giant ghoul stands directly in the way. Hungyo volunteers to hold the monster back, eager to prove himself. Even while the fairy complains about the strain, Jinwoo reassures him and keeps the team focused on the objective. Jinwoo turns his attention fully to the giant ghoul and starts assessing the encounter. He determines its location should be just ahead. He recalls the standard method for this floor. 2 parties distract the giant ghoul, while the rest make a run for the exit. The usual strategy depends on sacrifice and evasion, with only part of the group escaping while others buy time. Jinwoo rejects that approach before anyone can commit to it. He states that such a cautious strategy is only necessary for challengers below his level. Instead, he asks Pak Ryong whether she has continued building Yun stacks for a stronger attack. She confirms she has reached 5 stacks, readying her power for his plan. He tells her to keep stacking and move out, while the team accepts his confidence without question. As the giant ghoul looms in the distance, Jinwoo treats it as nothing more than a target. He decides they will not run past this boss at all, but destroy it in a single blow. A swarm of skeletal monsters surges through the ruined town, howling as the attack closes in. One of the creatures lunges down toward the ground, pressing the assault on the defenders below. A young man spots an opening or target point in the distance and urgently directs his allies there. In response, a massive titanium golem and an isoline familiar move into position to intercept the horde. The frost familiar releases a wave of freezing power to control the battlefield. From afar, a gunner supports the effort by firing into the frozen mass of enemies. The combined barrage knocks monsters apart and buys the team breathing room. The leader immediately orders the frost unit to keep fighting while he coordinates the next move. He senses a new threat before it fully appears. A larger enemy arrives, confirming that more of the monsters have reached them. The leader assigns himself to cover the titanium golem's blind side while the red-haired mage stays close. The golem plants itself in front of the civilians, becoming their shield against the oncoming wave. The monsters pile onto the golem, trying to overwhelm it through sheer numbers. Even as the golem absorbs the impact, the team's flying summons and fire support strike back from both sides. Seeing the line hold, the leader calls for the drill instructor, and the swordsman answers at once. Asked if he is ready, the swordsman confirms without hesitation. The leader notes his calm, and the swordsman makes clear he sees no reason to be tense. They shift into a coordinated plan. The red-haired mage will prepare explosive dragon magic while the others clear the field fast. The leader specifically orders the drill instructor to herd the monsters into the spell's range. The fairy-like caster begins charging consecutive explosive dragon waves, making the objective clear to everyone. The swordsman launches himself into the enemy line to carry out the setup. The monsters rush him head-on, trying to crush him before he can reposition them. He reads their movement in an instant and finds the opening he needs. With a swift upward strike, he cuts through the attackers and breaks their momentum. He slips past the giant maw unharmed, proving he is far faster than the creatures expected. Confidently, he judges the monsters too slow to catch him. Then a more dangerous undead reveals itself, its glowing red eyes marking it as a serious threat. The swordsman is suddenly forced high into the air as the new enemy attacks from below. The towering red-eyed undead rises into view, wounded but still active and ready to counter. It slams down with crushing force, threatening to catch the swordsman before he can recover. As he tumbles, he calls out for Pakryong, signaling for immediate support. The red-haired mage answers by raising her staff and gathering a ring of blazing power. She commits fully to the attack and unleashes Dragon Wave. A massive fire dragon erupts forward, sweeping across the battlefield toward the clustered undead. The spell takes shape as a ferocious inferno, overwhelming everything in its path. The blast slams directly into the enemy line with devastating force. The leader recognizes that no ordinary defense can withstand an attack on this scale. The undead are consumed, their resistance rendered meaningless by the sheer intensity of the flames. As the firestorm rages, the swordsman calmly adjusts his grip and prepares to finish what remains. One surviving red-eyed undead emerges from the blaze, still trying to fight through the damage. A dark red strike drops from above and cuts it down before it can recover. The leader watches with quiet satisfaction as the last threat is erased. With the area secured, the swordsman praises the team's performance while standing over the fallen enemy. The leader, pleased with their pace, jokes about how quickly they have cleared the trial so far. He boasts that if the Tower of Trials were judged by speed, they would be leading easily. Without lingering, he orders everyone to keep advancing, and the team agrees. As they move on, another ally incinerates a fresh pack of monsters blocking the route ahead. The leader and the swordsman pause to study a map and work out the next direction. The leader quickly identifies a breach in the rubble and points out the path forward. Their support units move to open and secure that route, preparing the party to push deeper into the trial. A tiny fairy throws herself into one last hard strike as the battle reaches its end. With the young fighter standing calm in front, his summoned stone giant looms behind him, making it clear the fight is already decided. The enemy is blasted away, and the system announces that they are leaving Chrome, the ruined city overrun by ghouls. Back in the aftermath, his companion cheerfully declares the floor an easy clear while the exhausted fairy complains she can no longer feel her arms. The tower immediately pays out a reward, granting a random B-rank synthesis blueprint box. The black-haired player stares at the floating prize in surprise as the victory sinks in. The system confirms they have conquered the first floor of the Tower of Trials, while the fairy and red-haired girl are still caught in their own bickering and recovery. The armored fighter cuts through the noise and calls everyone back to attention. Grinning, the black-haired player praises the team and decides it is time to head back. The others pause, still processing the sudden end of the trial and the reward they earned. Their mood lightens, and the group shares a brief moment of satisfaction before leaving. A dark portal opens outside a modern building where two guards wait for returning players. One guard is confused because no one should be scheduled to come out yet, and certainly not this soon. The player steps out of the portal, and the guards recognize him as Baek Jin-woo. He casually tells them to keep up the good work, leaving one guard too flustered to respond properly. Once he is gone, the guards realize this kind of speed is unheard of and begin to grasp how abnormal his clear time was. When they awkwardly ask whether he is already done, Jin-woo is genuinely puzzled that his quick return would be a problem. The guards hurriedly assure him there is no issue at all and let him pass without further questions. Jin-woo casually says he will be back tomorrow, leaving the guards stunned all over again. They realize that if he returns that soon, he is probably planning to challenge the second floor immediately. Walking away alone, Ji-woo reflects that the whole situation is getting strange even by his standards. Still, he senses that the man behind these trials may be preparing something much bigger. The story shifts back to the city and the ordinary world waiting outside the tower. Elsewhere, a businesswoman works late in her office, still thinking about a gift from the past. She suddenly remembers the rainbow snail and wonders whether it has been put to good use. The rare B-rank summon comes back to mind as something she once handed over with hope. She recalls that it had originally been one of the company's business assets, but she willingly gave it to Jinwoo's mother as a personal gift. That memory turns meaningful because she knows the summon was dismissed as worthless only because people misunderstood it. In the past, players ignored the rainbow snail since it lacked combat value and seemed to have no useful skill, but the truth changed the moment its slime was actually touched and used. The effect was so shocking that it immediately overturned everything people thought about the summon. Daesung had recognized the value of the rainbow snail's slime long before anyone else did. Its secretion could soften and restore skin so dramatically that it became the basis for premium skincare research. Remembering that, the woman smiles to herself, knowing the snail's future market value would become enormous once the business launched. Even so, she feels no regret over the loss because the gift went to the woman who gave birth to Ji-woo. For her, that alone makes the sacrifice worthwhile. At home, Jinwoo's father rushes in when he sees his wife staring at herself in alarm. She realizes the wrinkles where she applied the slime have disappeared. The rainbow snail suddenly looks far less useless now that its true talent has been proven. Her husband excitedly tells her she looks years younger, and she laughs off the praise while clearly delighted. She is astonished that such a tiny amount could have such a strong effect. Comparing it to ordinary slime, she concludes that only the substance drawn directly from the summon has any real power. The system confirms her finding by showing the snail has exhausted all its slime and now needs 24 hours to recharge. Instead of being discouraged, she immediately starts thinking about what steady, repeated use could do. Her husband all but worships the woman who gave them this miracle, calling Jia a benefactor beyond compare. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Jinwoo's mother can only thank her sincerely. The next day, Jinwoo meets his companions outdoors and sets the reward box down in front of them. Already irritated, he complains that the game's reward system is pure luck. Staring at the unopened chest, he questions whether this underwhelming box is really what they got for clearing the first floor. The fairy urges him to open it anyway, arguing that a tower reward might still contain something valuable. Baek Jinwoo opens a low-level trash-ring reward box and, as expected for the first floor, finds mostly poor items. He dismisses the haul as worthless, and sees no reason to expect anything special from such an early floor. While he sits with his companions, their armored ally announces they should begin training immediately, catching Jinwoo off guard. The man argues they are nearing the 10th floor and their current strength, especially against the Cyclops there, is still inadequate. The tiny fairy violently agrees, insisting rest is pointless and pushing everyone to prepare now. Jinwoo stays calm and decides the reward itself matters less than building stronger summons. Their harsh trainer starts the fairy on an absurdly intense routine, reinforcing that power is the real prize. Jinwoo turns to a different reward and activates a random synthesis blueprint box, hoping for something better. Instead of junk, the system grants him a guaranteed summoning scroll blueprint, which immediately catches his attention. He studies the new item, trying to understand what makes a guaranteed blueprint different from an ordinary one. The explanation reveals that this blueprint can produce the exact summon he wants rather than a random result. That possibility makes him wonder whether he might even be able to target an exceptionally rare X-rank summon. He recalls that among the 10 summons lost during the bug incident, 2 had been B-rank standouts. Those missing summons were Daldori, famed for overwhelming combat ability, and Rund, a rune-crafting dwarf. Jinwoo realizes either one would greatly strengthen his team, and that the problem is whether the system still treats them as obtainable through this blueprint. He worries that if the system now classifies them as X-rank, this item will no longer be enough to call them back. Even so, he looks toward his current struggling summons, and keeps considering the chance. He reasons that because those 3 originally came from low-grade summons, there may still be a loophole. As his companions continue their exhausting training, Jinwoo weighs the value of each lost summon. He remembers that Daldori is absurdly strong in combat, while Rund can create runes, making both choices strategically valuable. Faced with a choice between raw power and utility, he hesitates because either summon could change his future progress. His indecision deepens when he remembers that reviving Rund would require outrageous crafting materials. The worst requirement is a King's Token, a unique soulbound item that cannot be traded. That token only drops from bosses every 10 floors in the Tower of Trials, making it a brutal bottleneck. Because it is bound to the hunter who earns it, there is no shortcut through the market or other players. He recalls how many players who failed to clear the tower had raged over being unable to obtain one by any means except hunting. After thinking it through, Jinwoo falls silent and sets the blueprint aside for the moment. He decides he can postpone the summon choice until later. For now, he resolves that the priority is leveling his current summons and pushing farther up the tower. With that settled, he rallies the group and proposes they tackle the 10th floor Cyclops together. His sudden enthusiasm shocks the others, and one of them immediately worries this means even more punishing training before they can go home. The prospect crushes the exhausted girl, who realizes her suffering is far from over. Elsewhere in the city, the focus shifts from training to the outside world reacting to Jinwoo's progress. A staff member sends a report confirming that Baek Jinwoo has already cleared the first floor and attaching the tower entry logs. The news reaches the director, who asks whether anyone can get Jinwoo under control. His secretary admits that despite managing him on paper, they do not truly have authority over him. Another executive bitterly notes that this is exactly what he warned about, because Jinwoo has already slipped beyond their grasp. The complaint recalls earlier advice that they should have secured Jinwoo properly before losing influence over him. Now all they can do is admit that every attempt to rein him in has failed. The director laments that keeping Jinwoo close would have been politically valuable, especially for winning votes. They even recognize that his appeal is not just his talent but also the public image he projects. That shallow but useful realization only makes the director more frustrated at the opportunities slipping away. Before the mood can settle, an aide bursts in with urgent new information. He reports that Baek Jinwoo has conquered the Tower of Trials again, prompting confusion because they assume it must only be the second floor. For a moment, the room relaxes, thinking the achievement is minor and expected. The director even starts to joke that if the second floor is similar to the first, clearing it should have been easy. But the messenger hesitates, clearly terrified to finish the report. He corrects them and says the update is not about the second floor at all. Jinwoo has already reached and cleared the 9th floor. When they learn he did it in less than an hour after entering the tower, the director is left utterly shattered by how far beyond their expectations Jinwoo has become. At the association, officials scramble around the collapsed director as shocking tower records throw the room into chaos. They realize Jinwoo's pace is absurd, having cleared the first floor yesterday and already surged from the 2nd to the 9th in about an hour. Even after checking the records to rule out an error, the data confirms the impossible result. The revelation spreads that he cleared floors 2 through 9 consecutively without even leaving the tower, astonishing everyone because many rankers have never reached the 9th floor at all. By their standards, Jinwoo's performance already places him at the level of a ranker, even before the official rankings update. The director, overwhelmed by desire to recruit Baek Jinwoo, nearly loses himself over the opportunity. His subordinate can only snap him back to his senses before his obsession gets worse. Elsewhere, the story shifts quietly to Jinwoo's home after the climb. Jinwoo wakes up drained and admits that clearing all the way to the 9th floor in one run pushed him to exhaustion. Still half asleep, he tells his summoned companions they all did well and should rest for the day too. He postpones checking the tower rewards until tomorrow, while his companions are pleased to hear they can finally relax. Ramba immediately settles in to enjoy the promised break, but the armored summon refuses to accept rest, treating Jinwoo's pause as a lapse in discipline. He insists that while their lord may sleep, they cannot, and moves to keep the others from objecting too loudly. Ramba protests that Jinwoo explicitly ordered them to rest and accuses him of forcing more training anyway. The knight silences her and reminds everyone that Jinwoo's safety comes before their comfort. He singles Ramba out and begins a stern review of her performance in the tower. He points out that during the battle with the giant ghoul on the 7th floor, her attack speed buff dropped at a critical moment. He adds that she even took a break during the fight against the ghoul lord on the 8th floor, proving she lost focus in combat. Ramba fires back that his standards are unreasonable and complains that a fairy cannot be expected to swing a staff non-stop all day. The knight counters that even one small mistake could cost Jinwoo his life, so excuses are unacceptable. Ramba insists he is exaggerating because Jinwoo was strong enough to defeat the ghoul lord even without her buffs. The knight warns that Jinwoo will keep climbing higher, where that kind of complacency will become deadly. He reminds her that the tower's difficulty will only keep increasing as Jinwoo advances. His question lands hard. If she repeats the same mistakes later, the consequences may be fatal. Ramba is shaken into silence as the weight of that possibility finally reaches her. The knight turns next to Pakryong and begins evaluating her mistakes as well. He calmly lists every time her attacks missed on the 5th, 7th, and 9th floors until she can only bow her head and apologize. He tells them mistakes themselves are forgivable, but denying them or pretending they do not matter is a serious flaw. Just as he prepares to conclude, both girls sense that he is about to unveil something even more troublesome. He dramatically appears in a full trainer's outfit, making his authority impossible to ignore. With sunglasses in place, he fully commits to the role of drill instructor. The whistle around his neck seals the transformation from guardian to merciless coach. He declares the start of another day of intensive training, and the two summons realize resistance is pointless. As he radiates terrifying enthusiasm, Ramba and Pakryong can only cry out to Jinwoo for rescue. Jinwoo, still in bed, vaguely senses something happening but remains detached from the chaos. By the next day, the scene moves outdoors under calm daylight. Now recovered, Jinwoo opens his inventory and finally reviews the rewards from the Tower of Trials. He finds the haul surprisingly valuable, including essences, polish, a light speed rune, summoning scrolls, and selection tickets. One reward, the Essence of Light, is identified as a stockpile of pure energy crystals. Another reward gives him 3 highest grade summoning scrolls, adding major future options. What interests him most is the highest grade rune called Light Speed. Watching Ramba collapse from training while the night still looms over her, Jiwoo immediately decides the rune is meant for her. He learns that it is one of Ramba's graduation runes, a special set that unlocks a summon's full potential once all 6 are equipped. Jinwoo decides to max enhance the rune and equip it to Ramba, then considers finishing her entire build while he is at it. Using 2 soulbound highest grade rune selection tickets, he obtains 2 more copies of the Light Speed rune. With 3 copies secured, he notes that only 3 graduation runes remain before Ramba's set is complete. He plans to save the universal polish until all 6 runes are gathered and enhanced, leaving only the intermediate skill book ticket to consider for now. Since Hun's training already covers much of what he needs, he sees less value in skill books for himself, though he recognizes they can still be useful. After thinking it through, Jinwoo reaches a decision about what reward item he is willing to sell. Satisfied with his plan, he decides his next move is to visit Baekhyun again after some time apart. The chapter closes on Ajin, smiling warmly, setting up their impending reunion.